Virtue consort led Justin Lawrence to a seat, her smile a mixture of reproach and affection. I was busy fetching your daughter-in-law, so I've been a bit preoccupied. Justin Lawrence smiled, his earlier frailty replaced by a robust demeanor. Grace Flowers, noticing Justin Lawrence wasn't feigning illness before Virtue consort, felt slightly more at ease, yet puzzled why he only displayed his healthy state when alone with her. She glanced at the middle-aged court lady, perhaps he couldn't feign illness before her, suggesting she was Virtue consort's confidant. Catching Grace Flowers' gaze, the middle-aged court lady offered a friendly smile. Is this my daughter-in-law? Virtue consort inquired softly, her eyes on Grace Flowers standing beside Justin Lawrence. If she weren't your daughter-in-law, why would I bring her to the palace to meet you? Justin Lawrence drew Grace Flowers closer, introducing her, Mother, this is your daughter-in-law, Grace Flowers. He then turned to Grace Flowers, gently prompting, Come, address her as Mother. Greetings, Mother. Grace Flowers hastily performed a curtsy. My dear child, there's no need for such formalities among family. Come here, let me have a good look at you. Virtue consort smiled, extending her hand to draw Grace Flowers closer, her gaze approving. You're such a lovely young woman, a perfect match for our Sienna. Thank you for your kind words, Mother. Grace Flowers blushed with gratitude. Such compliments from others wouldn't have fazed her, but coming from Virtue consort, Justin Lawrence's mother, it was different. My little princess, I'm surprised you're blushing after just 2 compliments from Mother. Where's that confidence you usually have around me? Justin Lawrence teased, noticing Grace Flowers' shyness. Humph, she wasn't blushing, just shy, all right. How could this lecher be so dense? Grace Flowers glared at him. Huh, Sienna, how can you speak to Grace like that? Virtue consort, observing their comfortable interaction, couldn't suppress a comforting smile. Her beautiful eyes, brimming with gentle tears, reflected her joy. It was the first time she'd witnessed Sienna so at ease in her presence, like a normal family, with her son and daughter-in-law gathered around her. Your Highness, today is a joyous occasion, you mustn't cry. The middle-aged court lady whispered, noticing Virtue consort's brimming eyes. I'm happy, truly happy. Virtue consort dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, forcing a smile. Little lass, come sit. Justin Lawrence led Grace Flowers to the seat beside him, their fingers interlaced. Must you feign affection before Virtue consort? It's so artificial, anyone can see we're putting on an act. Grace Flowers whispered, seizing the moment while Virtue consort wiped her tears. Haven't we been affectionate enough before? Justin Lawrence glanced at their intertwined fingers, a sly smile playing on his lips. He leaned closer to Grace Flowers' ear, murmuring, Tonight, I'll show you just how affectionate we can be, enough to make others envious. You lecher, can your mind ever stray from such thoughts? Grace Flowers shot him an exasperated look. Everything seemed to lead back to the bedroom, she was truly at his mercy. Even in such a formal setting, meeting his elders, he couldn't maintain decorum. Sienna, Grace, when will you two give me a grandchild to hold? Virtue consort inquired, smiling at the newlywed couple whispering to each other. We're working on it, Mother, rest assured. Justin Lawrence's gaze shifted from Grace Flowers to her abdomen, a gentle smile illuminating his face. Perhaps his little princess already carried a new life within her. Grace Flowers froze. A child? How could she have a child now? No, she hadn't come to this time to marry and have children. She had to prevent this from happening. Sooner or later, she had to return to her own time. If she had a child, leaving behind such a connection, how could she live a normal life back in the modern world? No, absolutely not. Grace Flowers' expression turned serious. She hadn't considered pregnancy before, thankfully, Virtue consort's words had reminded her. If she truly became pregnant, it would be too late. She had to find a way to prevent it. Grace Flowers bit her lip, lowering her head. Both Justin Lawrence and Virtue Consort mistook her lowered head for shyness, exchanging smiles. They were oblivious to her inner turmoil. After lunch at Virtue Palace and further conversation with Virtue Consort, they prepared to return to the prince's residence. Virtue Consort allowed Justin Lawrence to board the carriage first, telling him, "I have a few words for Grace, go ahead and wait in the carriage." Grace Flowers exchanged a puzzled look with Justin Lawrence, unsure what Virtue Consort wished to discuss privately. Justin Lawrence nodded, offering a reassuring smile, signaling her not to worry. Taking Grace Flowers' hand, Virtue Consort led her towards a vibrant flower garden. "Grace," she began, "I want to thank you." "Thank me?" Grace Flowers stopped in surprise. What good deed had she done to warrant Virtue Consort's gratitude? "You've opened Siener's heart. Since childhood, he's kept his distance from women, which is why he remained unmarried. But since your arrival, I've noticed a change in him. He's no longer the same, at least not with you. He's genuinely affectionate." Virtue Consort's gaze held Grace Flowers intently. "You're too kind, Mother. I haven't done anything to deserve your thanks." Grace Flowers responded quickly. The Virtue Consort was a beautiful yet fragile woman, but her eyes held an undeniable strength. "No, you deserve it. Siener is an unfortunate child. It's all my fault, he's borne burdens beyond his years. In time, you'll understand him better. I can see that Siener has given you his heart completely. I hope you can stay by his side, never leaving him, and be together for a lifetime." Virtue Consort's beautiful face held a plea as she gazed at Grace Flowers, awaiting a promise. Grace Flowers could have easily offered a careless agreement to ease this kind mother's heart, but she couldn't. After all, she was merely a fleeting passerby in this great Gene dynasty. Moreover, history had recorded that this dynasty would vanish in 3 years. She couldn't predict what the future held. Grace. Virtue Consort's worry deepened at Grace Flowers' hesitation. She saw this young woman as intelligent and discerning, believing she could support Siener. Hence, with a mother's heart, she sought Grace Flowers' promise. "Yes, as long as I'm here, I won't leave him." Grace Flowers nodded, assuring him that for the duration of her stay in this time, she would remain by Justin Lawrence's side. She couldn't predict the future, nor make promises to Virtue Consort. "With your word, I'm relieved." Virtue Consort sighed, her eyes, impossible to deceive, revealed that this child was true to her word. Once she promised, she wouldn't go back on it. Virtue Consort's face clouded with sorrow, a deep yearning coloring her voice as she murmured, "Grace, the greatest pain in this world is to love and not be loved in return." Surprised by Virtue Consort's sudden sadness, Grace Flowers quickly comforted her, "Don't worry, Mother, you are blessed and will surely grow old with the Emperor." Him. At the mention of the Emperor, a flash of hatred crossed Virtue Consort's beautiful face, not a common resentment, but a deep-seated animosity. Grace Flowers was startled by the intensity of the hatred. What had happened between this mother and son and Justin Lawrence's father? Why did the mere mention of the Emperor evoke such bone-deep loathing? "Go on, get in the carriage, don't keep Siener waiting." Virtue Consort, seemingly aware of her outburst, masked the hatred with a smile. Returning to the carriage with Virtue Consort, Grace Flowers ascended the steps, waved goodbye, and entered. "Mother, we're leaving now. Take care of yourself." Justin Lawrence, parting the curtains, addressed Virtue Consort standing outside. "Visit me often with Grace." "Go now," Virtue Consort said wistfully. At Justin Lawrence's command, the guards slowly drove the carriage away from Virtue Palace. Grace Flowers, lifting the curtain, watched Virtue Consort and the middle-aged palace maid beside her. "Is that middle-aged palace maid the one who came with Virtue Consort as part of her dowry?" Grace Flowers inquired. She didn't know Virtue Consort's family background, as all attention seemed focused on Justin Lawrence, leaving the Jianghu with little gossip about Virtue Consort. No, Madame Cloud has served mother since she entered the palace. They're mistress and servant, but their bond is like sisters. Madame Cloud is deeply loyal to mother. She had chances to leave the palace and marry, but stayed to care for mother. Madame Cloud is also the one who watched me grow up, Justin Lawrence explained, his voice filled with respect for Madame Cloud. Grace Flowers pensively watched Virtue Consort and Madame Cloud recede into the distance. The inner palace was a gilded cage, and for women without the emperor's favor, a lonely fate awaited. Yet, the emperor was said to favor Virtue Consort, making Justin Lawrence the most beloved among the princes. But seeing Virtue Consort's hatred for the emperor, Grace Flowers wondered how much truth lay in rumors. ### Chapter 52, Seeking Contraceptive Medicine. The carriage arrived at the prince's residence early. After Grace Flowers alighted, Justin Lawrence instructed the guards to turn the carriage around, saying he had matters to attend to. Spotting Susie Green leading Jason Lawrence towards her, Grace Flowers remembered she hadn't yet spoken to Susie Green about the letters. "Miss, you're back. How was the palace?" Susie Green asked, hurrying towards her. "First, help me change out of these clothes." Grace Flowers tugged at the cumbersome palace attire, longing for comfortable clothing. The constricting waist of the palace dress, though fitting her slender frame, felt tight. "Yes, miss, please return to your room. I'll help you change." Susie Green released Jason Lawrence's hand and moved behind Grace Flowers, lifting the hem of her long skirt to ease her movement. "Wife, you look so beautiful in this outfit, like a great beauty." Jason Lawrence, walking beside Susie Green, also tried to lift a side of the skirt. "Does that mean if I don't wear this, I'm not a great beauty anymore?" Grace Flowers chuckled, asking. "Before, you were a little beauty, now you're a great beauty." "It's different," Jason Lawrence declared with an air of adult wisdom. "Young master, whether miss is a great beauty or a little beauty, she's still a beauty." "There's no difference," Susie Green corrected Jason Lawrence's misconception. "If there's big and small, then there's a difference." "Susie Green, how can you be so silly?" Jason Lawrence exclaimed, giving her a "you're so foolish" look. Hearing their banter, Grace Flowers smiled. The prince's residence was becoming increasingly lively. Reaching her bedroom, Grace Flowers quickly shed the palace attire for a comfortable outfit, removing the golden hairpins and restyling her hair simply. "Right, Susie Green, there's something I need to discuss with you." Grace Flowers turned from the dressing table, addressing Susie Green. "Please, miss, tell me." Susie Green nodded, her expression serious. "If the guards deliver any letters to you, give them to me. They're for me, I'm using your name." Grace Flowers explained simply. "Why would you use my name, miss?" Susie Green inquired curiously. "Could I possibly use my title as the prince's wife to communicate with outsiders? Using your name is best. I don't want to reveal my identity." Grace Flowers stated. "Yes, I'll inform the guards to deliver any letters directly to me." Susie Green didn't question the nature of the letters. Her mistress had her own affairs, and she was glad to see Grace Flowers no longer confined to her room all day, venturing out only when Master Bennet visited. The mention of letters reminded Grace Flowers of the courtesans at Fragrant Pavilion, who were surely knowledgeable about contraception. She stood up abruptly, saying to Susie Green, "I need to go out. Have Ruby Willow prepare the carriage." Seeing her urgency, Susie Green responded quickly and rushed out. To find Ruby Willow. Overhearing Grace Flowers' plans, Jason Lawrence cheered, "Wife, I want to go too." "Be good, Justin. I have important business to attend to and will be back soon. Stay here and play with Susie Green. I'll take you out next time." "All right," Grace Flowers soothed him gently. "Okay." Jason Lawrence, though dejected, didn't cry or fuss. He extended his pinky finger, saying, "Wife, let's pinky swear. That way, you'll definitely take me out next time. Even without a pinky swear, I'll definitely take you out." Grace Flowers smiled, her heart filled with affection for the obedient child. She couldn't resist sitting down and kissing his small face, then linking her pinky with his. The doors suddenly swung open, and Susie Green hurried in, announcing, "Miss, the carriage is ready and waiting outside." Grace Flowers rose, taking Jason Lawrence's hand as they left the room. The carriage was waiting just outside. "All right, I'm off. Have fun, you two." With that, Grace Flowers boarded the carriage, instructing the guards to proceed to the city. This matter needed immediate attention. Rubbing her stomach, Grace Flowers knew she needed preventative measures. Justin Lawrence's nightly diligence meant pregnancy was inevitable. The carriage sped along, quickly reaching the city streets. Grace Flowers instructed the guards to stop at Harmony Street, telling them to wait while she headed towards Fragrant Pavilion. Although it was already 3 or 4 in the afternoon, Fragrant Pavilion wasn't yet open for business. The situation was similar to her previous visit, but this time, the guards weren't dozing but chatting amongst themselves. The middle-aged guard was the first to spot Grace Flowers. Seeing her approach, he stood up and asked hesitantly, "Miss, are you here to see Miss Lou Grace again?" "No, this time I'm looking for Mama. Please inform her that Susie Green needs to see her." Grace Flowers almost slipped up, nearly revealing her name. "Yes, miss, please wait a moment." The middle-aged guard nodded decisively and hurried upstairs to relay the message. Shortly after, he returned, saying, "Miss, please come in." May I ask, could we avoid the aerial bridge? I'm a bit afraid of heights." Grace Flowers smiled sheepishly. "Certainly, Mama instructed me to lead you via the stairs. Please follow me." The guard remained composed, nodding calmly before leading the way. Grateful for Mama's thoughtfulness, Grace Flowers assumed her previous request had prompted Mama's awareness of her fear of heights. Reaching the far wall of the main hall, they came to another door. The guard opened it, allowing Grace Flowers to enter before closing it behind them. Inside was a charming small courtyard, with Mama's quarters to the right. The guard led Grace Flowers along a cobblestone path to the main entrance of the building, where Lily Pearl was already waiting. Lily Pearl nodded to the guard, who, understanding the signal, turned and left the courtyard. "Miss Susie Green, is there something important that brings you to see Mama today?" Lily Pearl inquired with a gentle smile. "Yes, it's quite urgent." Grace Flowers nodded. This was a matter of life and death, certainly important. "No wonder you're in such a hurry. Mama is waiting inside. Let's go up." Lily Pearl, noticing Grace Flowers' serious expression, spoke quickly. Grace Flowers nodded, and together they hurried into the main hall, ascending the stairs towards Mama's bedroom. Upon entering, they found Mama reclining on a chaise lounge, fanning herself gently and resting with her eyes closed. "Mama, Miss Susie Green is here." Lily Pearl spoke softly. Mama opened her eyes, looking towards Grace Flowers. "Miss Susie Green, what brings you to me in such haste?" "It's about," Grace Flowers glanced at Lily Pearl hesitantly. "The fewer people who knew about this, the better. Lily Pearl, you may leave us." Mama, sensing Grace Flowers' hesitation, instructed Lily Pearl to withdraw. Once Lily Pearl had left, Mama sat up from the chaise lounge, gesturing towards a chair beside the table for Grace Flowers to sit. "Mama, it's like this." Grace Flowers pulled the chair closer to the chaise lounge, lowering her voice, "I need contraception." "What? You want to take it?" Mama exclaimed, staring at Grace Flowers' stomach in disbelief. No, you misunderstand. Susie Green is still a maiden." Grace Flowers shook her head quickly. Remembering she was currently assuming Susie Green's identity, she had to uphold Susie Green's reputation. "That's good. You frightened me." Mama patted her chest. She had assumed Susie Green was either married or had encountered a situation requiring contraception. She knew her master was interested in this young woman, and it was rare for him to show interest in anyone. If they could become a couple, the old master and mistress would worry less about their master's frivolous ways. It's my younger sister who's married, but doesn't want to have children right away. You know, it's a delicate matter. I happen to know you, ma'am, and figured Fragrant Pavilion would have reliable contraceptives, so I came here despite the inconvenience. Please don't blame me, Grace Flowers explained. I see, you've come to the right place, the madam smiled. I thought it was something serious, turns out it's just a small matter. I knew coming to you was the right choice, Grace Flowers sighed in relief. My name is Sophia Song. Miss Susie Green, you can call me Mrs. Song, the madam said. Having witnessed the young woman's martial arts skills before, she had wanted to befriend her. Seeing her straightforward, generous, and valiant nature, she knew such a friendship would be beneficial. After years in the pleasure district, she acted based on self-interest, even friendships were evaluated for their potential benefits. Mrs. Song, please, just call me Susie Green, Grace Flowers smiled at Sophia Song. All right, I'll have Lily Pearl prepare the contraceptives. I doubt your sister would dare buy them from a pharmacy. For your sake, I'll have Lily Pearl get some from our own stock. Sophia Song called for Lily Pearl and instructed her to fetch the medicine. Hearing the request for contraceptives, Lily Pearl's surprise mirrored Sophia Song's earlier reaction, her gaze drifting towards Grace Flowers' abdomen. Don't jump to conclusions. It's for Susie Green's sister. Our Susie Green is still a maiden, Sophia Song, seeing Lily Pearl's reaction, realized she had the same thought and clarified. Yes, ma'am, I'll get it right away. How much is needed? Lily Pearl asked Grace Flowers. Well, I'm not sure about the dosage, Grace Flowers scratched her head, embarrassed. One dose lasts a month. If your sister is worried about her husband's family finding out, she can take one dose now and come back for more next month, Sophia Song decided for Grace Flowers. Mrs. Song is right. Her in-laws want a grandchild soon, but her health isn't good. She's taking medicine and is afraid it might affect the baby, so she doesn't dare conceive now. Grace Flowers fabricated a plausible excuse. Taking medicine can indeed affect the fetus. Your sister has some medical knowledge, Sophia Song nodded in agreement. A moment later, Lily Pearl returned with a packet of medicine and handed it to Grace Flowers. Grace Flowers took the medicine, stood up, and bid farewell to Sophia Song. Mrs. Song, I must go now. I need to get this to my sister as soon as possible. All right, go ahead. Lily Pearl, see Susie Green out, Sophia Song nodded, instructing Lily Pearl. The two left the room, descended the stairs, and reached the exit. Grace Flowers secured the medicine and walked briskly towards Harmony Crossroads, spotting her carriage still parked where she left it. Once Grace Flowers boarded, the guard, following her instructions, quickly drove the carriage back to the prince's estate. Chapter 53, the first letter arriving at Prince Xian's residence, Grace Flowers summoned Susie Green to her bedchamber. Grace Flowers handed the medicine packet to Susie Green, instructing, Susie Green, take this medicine packet and decoct it, but don't say it's for me. Say it's a tonic for yourself. Once it's ready, bring it to me discreetly. Susie Green took the medicine packet, her face etched with worry. Miss, are you ill? Why do you need to take medicine? It's just irregular menses. It's not something I can easily discuss with others, so you absolutely mustn't let anyone know. Otherwise, what will the entire residence think of me? Furthermore, after decocting the medicine, destroy the dregs. Leave no trace, understand? Grace Flowers instructed carefully. After speaking, she looked at Susie Green, inquiringly. Susie Green continued to look at Grace Flowers with concern. Miss, you've always been frail, and your menses have always been irregular. I hope after taking this medicine, you'll recover. I hear irregular menses make it difficult to conceive. Ahem, yes, to conceive soon, I had this medicine prescribed to nourish my body. Remember, absolutely don't let anyone discover it's for me. Even if they see you decocting medicine, just say it's a tonic for yourself. The fewer people who know, the better." Grace Flowers coughed lightly, feeling a pang of guilt for deceiving the innocent Susie Green. "Miss, don't worry. I definitely won't let anyone find out. I'll go decoct the medicine right away." Susie Green nodded, carefully storing the medicine packet. Her mistress's affairs were her own. Once her mistress was healthy and bore a son, her position in Prince Xian's residence would be even more secure. "Good, go ahead. Thank you for your trouble. Find a way to prevent the servants from seeing you bring in the medicine. You can use a different container," Grace Flowers suggested. "I understand. I'll go decoct the medicine now." Susie Green finished speaking and quickly turned to leave. Grace Flowers sat down on the long couch, but then considered that if the medicine was brought into the room, the herbal scent would inevitably linger, refusing to dissipate. If Justin Lawrence caught a whiff of it, he would undoubtedly inquire. Therefore, Grace Flowers hastily called Susie Green back. "Bring the decocted medicine to the training grounds. I'll wait for you there." "Yes, miss, don't worry." Susie Green nodded and quickly exited once more. Grace Flowers looked at the sky. It was likely around 4 in the afternoon. Justin Lawrence usually returned before nightfall. It being summer, the sky typically darkened around 7, meaning there were still 2 or 3 hours left, ample time for Susie Green to decoct the medicine. Breathing a sigh of relief, she headed towards the training grounds. She dedicated time each day to martial arts practice. Having visited the palace early that morning, she hadn't yet trained today. It was just as well, while Susie Green prepared the medicine, she could practice. Arriving at the training grounds, Grace Flowers spotted Jason Lawrence diligently practicing his swordsmanship, looking quite the part. So engrossed was he in his practice that Jason Lawrence didn't notice Grace Flowers' arrival. After observing for a moment, Grace Flowers clapped her hands. Hearing the clap, Jason Lawrence immediately stopped, and upon seeing Grace Flowers, he cried out joyfully, dropping his sword and running towards her. "Mother, why are you back so early?" Jason Lawrence asked cheerfully, throwing himself into Grace Flowers' embrace. "Back early to practice with Justin. Come, Mother will practice swordsmanship with you." Grace Flowers smiled, gently pinching Jason Lawrence's cheek, then stood and walked towards the weapon rack to retrieve her sword. The swordsmanship in the manual appeared simple at first glance, but in reality, it was incredibly profound and complex. Each sword move required careful study and contemplation to grasp its essence, not just casual imitation of the drawings. The key was knowing where to apply force and how to execute each move to unleash its maximum power. Ethan Bright cheerfully picked up the sword he had thrown on the ground, adjusted his stance, and began practicing with Grace Flowers again and again. Mother and son were both deeply focused, almost entirely absorbed in researching and exploring the intricacies of the swordsmanship, so time flew by quickly. Susie Green entered the training room carrying a tea set, with a teapot and 2 teacups. "Miss," Susie Green called to Grace Flowers, who was engrossed in her sword practice. Grace Flowers sheathed her sword and looked towards Susie Green. Susie Green nodded towards the tea set on the tray and then walked to the table in the corner, placing the tray upon it. "Young master, look at you, all sweaty. Come here, let me wipe your sweat." Susie Green led Ethan Bright to the door and meticulously wiped the beads of perspiration from his small face. While Susie Green took Ethan to the door, Grace Flowers quickly walked to the table and opened the teapot lid. As expected, it was a dark, inky medicinal concoction. Fortunately, the smell wasn't too unpleasant, nor was it overly strong. She tested the temperature of the teapot with her hand. It was lukewarm. Susie Green must have cooled it down already. She quickly poured the medicine into a cup, filling it to the brim. Looking at the jet-black liquid, Grace Flowers grimaced. She had always been a healthy child and had never taken herbal medicine before. She never thought that in this time and space, she would have her first experience with it. With no time to hesitate, Grace Flowers picked up the cup of medicine and drank it all in one gulp. Thankfully, it wasn't too bitter. The other cup contained clear water, likely prepared by Susie Green for rinsing her mouth. How thoughtful. Grace Flowers picked up the water, satisfied, and rinsed her mouth, only then finding the medicinal taste fading. All right, that's enough sword practice for today. Ethan, go take a bath. Your father will be back for dinner soon. Grace Flowers set the cup down, walked to the door, and spoke to Ethan. Then she quietly instructed Susie Green, wash that tea set thoroughly. Don't leave any scent behind. Susie Green nodded and returned to the training room, picking up the tea set to wash it. Grace Flowers watched Susie Green's retreating figure and unconsciously rubbed her stomach, finally at ease. She wouldn't have to worry about any mishaps anymore. She absolutely would not leave any children behind in this time and space. Looking at the fiery red sunset, Grace Flowers frowned slightly. She wondered when she would receive news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. She had thought that the professor's indication of finding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet in Justin Lawrence's possession would be a simple matter. Unexpectedly, not only was the Phoenix Dragon Goblet not at the Chien Prince's residence, but Justin Lawrence himself was unaware of its existence. Now, with Justin Lawrence assisting in the search, and even Martin Wood's intelligence network helping her find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, she hoped that after their combined efforts, news of it would surface quickly. The longer she stayed here, the more disrupted her plans would become. The sun gradually descended, and the sunset glow enveloped the sky, bathing even the entire Chien Prince's residence in a golden hue. The study within Prince Xian's residence. A petite figure bustled about before the bookshelves. The only sound within the hushed study was the rustling of pages. Grace Flowers, engrossed in a folklore volume, rapidly flipped through its pages, absorbing every detail. Having finished, she returned it to its place and resumed her search. Days had passed without a whisper from either Justin Lawrence or Martin Woods regarding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Unable to remain idle, she frequented Justin Lawrence's study, poring over texts, hoping to uncover some mention of the artifact within the folklore collections. She needed to broaden her search. Perhaps the goblet, in this era, lay hidden amongst the common folk. She had to examine these books, focused on daily life and customs, for any trace of the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Yet, after days within the study, no book had yielded any relevant information. Grace Flowers surveyed the shelves she'd already examined, sighing with a furrowed brow. Justin Lawrence's study was a miniature library, and after days of searching, she'd barely scratched the surface, perusing perhaps a tenth of its contents. It was a daunting task, and she couldn't fathom how long it would take to examine every volume. Though time-consuming, ancient texts lacked modern indexing, leaving her no other option. Footsteps approached from beyond the study's entrance. Ruby Willow's voice sounded at the door as she carefully entered, bearing a tray with a bowl of soup. At the sight of the soup, Grace Flowers' frown deepened, a silent cry of protest welling within her. Since Justin Lawrence's return from the imperial court, he'd instructed the servants to prepare a daily regimen of restorative tonics. She'd been subjected to a relentless onslaught of these concoctions, her palate weary of their taste. And they were undeniably effective. She felt her waist thickening, a perilous development. She couldn't bear the thought of regaining her health only to transform into a plump pig. Your Highness, please take a break. The soup is ready. It's best served hot, Ruby Willow said softly, placing the tray on the table and ladling the soup into a bowl. The rich aroma of the soup immediately filled the study. I don't want any more. Take it away, take it away. Grace Flowers waved her hand dismissively. The mere scent of the soup churned her stomach. Even the most delectable tonic became repulsive in excess. Did Justin Lawrence think he was fattening a hog? Your Highness, this is the last bowl, Ruby Willow said, a smile playing on her lips as she observed the princess's distasteful expression. The last one. Are you certain? You won't be bringing me another after lunch? Grace Flower's suspicious gaze shifted from the soup to Ruby Willow. I wouldn't dare deceive you, Your Highness. These tonics must be taken consistently for several days to achieve their full benefit. You've completed the course, so there's no need for more. Even tonics should be taken in moderation. Rest assured, this is truly the last bowl, Ruby Willow explained with a reassuring smile. She always found the princess's grimaces amusing, her genuine, unpretentious nature was endearing. Well, if that's the case, and since I've already endured it for days, I suppose I can forego this last one. Grace Flowers, relieved at the news, breathed a sigh of relief. Amen, Mother Mary, compassionate Buddha, blessed be all the deities. Finally, a reprieve from the tonics. She offered silent thanks to the heavens, but her spirits dampened as Ruby Willow, with a determined look, placed the bowl before her, clearly expecting her to finish it. Your Highness, His Highness instructed me to watch you finish this. If not, I will be punished. Ruby Willow spoke with certainty. Fine, fine, I'll drink it. Grace Flowers reluctantly took the bowl from Ruby Willow, frowning as if drinking poison, and gulped it down. There, all done. She handed the bowl back. Ruby Willow couldn't help but cover her mouth with a giggle, watching the princess drink the nourishing soup that ordinary people wouldn't even dream of, yet she drank it as if it were hard-to-swallow poison. Grace Flowers wiped her mouth and looked up to see Susie Green hurrying towards her, a letter in hand. Chapter 54, News of the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, Miss. A letter's arrived, a letter's arrived. Susie Green ran into the study, waving the letter excitedly. What letter has you so happy? Ruby Willow asked. Curiously, watching Susie Green skip towards them. Oh, Ruby Willow, you're here too. Seeing Ruby Willow, Susie Green remembered the letter's sensitive nature and quickly composed herself. It's a letter from Nanny Wong back home. I can't read, so I wanted Miss to help me. Grace Flowers observed Susie Green's quick thinking, nodding in approval. The girl was resourceful and quick-witted. I see, no wonder you're so happy. Let the princess read it for you. I'll take this bowl downstairs. Ruby Willow smiled, her eyes filled with envy. She hadn't received a letter from her family in years, having lost contact. She wondered if they were well. All right, you go ahead. Susie Green nodded, handing the letter to Grace Flowers. Miss, please read what Nanny Wong wrote. After Ruby Willow left the study with the bowl, Grace Flowers patted Susie Green's shoulder approvingly. Susie Green, you're so clever and quick-thinking. It seems I can entrust you with more important tasks in the future. Of course, Miss, rest assured. I'll do my best with anything you ask. Susie Green puffed out her chest proudly, pleased with the praise. Good, I know you will. Grace Flowers smiled, turning her attention back to the letter. The ordinary-looking letter, sealed with wax, revealed a small piece of white paper that fell to the floor when opened. Susie Green quickly bent down and picked it up, handing it to Grace Flowers. Miss, what does it say? Susie Green saw a few characters on the paper but didn't recognize them. It's a summons to a meeting. Grace Flowers looked at the small slip, thinking to herself how stingy it was to cut the paper so small. The small piece of paper contained only a few words. Hour of the Goat, meet at Fragrant Pavilion. Susie Green suddenly remembered something and looked at Grace Flowers in astonishment. Miss, when did you learn to read? They had grown up together. Although Grace Flowers was the eldest daughter of the Flowers, the master had never paid her any attention, and the second madam certainly hadn't bothered with her education. The other daughters of the Flowers had all been taught reading, music, and painting, but Grace Flowers had been left to her own devices. She had been just like Susie Green, illiterate. So how could she understand these words now? I've secretly studied before, so I know a few characters. If you want to learn, I can teach you. Grace Flowers said, her face and heart calm, knowing the original host couldn't read a single word. Yes, please. I'd love to learn. Susie Green nodded eagerly, having always envied the other girls in the Flowers who received an education. Now, thanks to the young miss, she could learn too. After lunch, I have some business to attend to. Watch Jason and don't let him run around. Grace Flowers instructed. Yes, it's almost lunchtime. I'll go tell Ruby Willow to prepare the carriage. Susie Green nodded and left. Grace Flowers held the note, pondering. Did the invitation to Fragrant Pavilion concern the appraisal of a treasure, or did it mean news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? The letter itself was blank. How irritating, such frugality. Taking a lighter from the drawer, Grace Flowers burned the letter to ash and tossed it out the window, the remnants scattering with the wind. Fragrant Pavilion. Sophia Song's room. A bewitching young man reclined on a daybed with his eyes closed, while Lily Pearl stood before him, gently fanning him. Upon entering, Grace Flowers saw this scene. Martin Woods was truly a rare beauty, his every gesture exuding an alluring charm. No wonder the women of the great Jean dynasty were so infatuated with him. Miss Susie Green, you've arrived. Lily Pearl, noticing Grace Flowers at the door, called out softly. Yes. Where is Mrs. Song? Grace Flowers inquired, not seeing Sophia Song in the room. Mother is attending to some matters. She'll be here shortly. Lily Pearl continued fanning. Martin Woods opened his eyes, looked at Grace Flowers, and smirked. Little Susie Green, you're concerned about others' presence when you see this young master. You narcissist. Your self-love is a disease, it needs treatment. Grace Flowers scoffed. Did this flirt think he could charm any woman? Narcissist. Martin Woods stroked his chin, raising an eyebrow. This was the first time anyone had dared to call him a narcissist. Yes, that's what I called you. Grace Flowers looked at Martin Woods, pretending to scrutinize him from head to toe, then nodded firmly. The title suits you. Haha, interesting, very interesting. This young master permits it. Only you, little one, may use this title. Martin Woods wasn't angered by being called a narcissist, instead, he laughed meaningfully, his alluring eyes flashing with a burning intensity as he stared at Grace Flowers. Why did you call me here? Do you have news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? Grace Flowers stopped joking and asked seriously. Could it be that the one you yearn for day and night is the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, and not this young master? Martin Woods drawled, posing a counter-question. Stop joking. I'm serious. Grace Flowers frowned. Finding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet was her only priority, she had no time for Martin Woods' games. If this young master said it was he who yearned for you, what would you do? Martin Woods spoke playfully, but a subtle seriousness flickered in his eyes. You fiend, you're truly idle. Grace Flowers stared intently at Martin Woods, her words cold and sharp after a long silence. Martin Woods nearly faltered under the girl's icy gaze. He raised a hand to his face, composing his stiffening expression. Though he'd anticipated her curt response, a flicker of disappointment pricked him. All right, no more teasing. I genuinely want to discuss the Phoenix Dragon Goblet with you. Martin Woods declared. Truly. Have you found the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? Grace Flowers brightened, her question eager. Sit down first. Don't be hasty. The Phoenix Dragon Goblet won't run away. Martin Woods gestured languidly toward Grace Flowers, inviting her to take the seat opposite him. Grace Flowers approached the long couch, pulled out a chair, and sat down, impatiently urging, speak quickly. Stop beating around the bush. Honestly, you're so impatient when you need something from me. I must be ill to exert myself finding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet for you. Martin Woods grumbled, his internal balance upset by her far greater enthusiasm for the goblet than for him. Cut the nonsense. Grace Flowers rolled her eyes, irritated. This fiend was truly long-winded. She loathed this air of mystery when she sought information. Under Grace Flowers' gaze, Martin Woods finally relented, ceasing his circumlocution. My investigator sent news this morning. He seems to have picked up a lead suggesting the Bennett family possesses the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Martin Woods stated succinctly. Seems to. Is this information reliable? Grace Flowers frowned. Seems to. The investigator's information was incredibly vague. It's not yet certain. I thought you should know what my investigator uncovered, so I immediately sent for you upon hearing this. Martin Woods knew the uncertain news was of little use, yet an inexplicable urge to see her had him summoning her without hesitation. I see, Grace Flowers pondered. The Bennett family was undoubtedly one of the three great noble families. The handsome face of a young man sprang to mind, then shifted, the youth transforming into a charming, mature man, exuding a carefree elegance. Philip Bennett? Grace Flowers had a sudden realization. If it was indeed the Bennett family she knew, she could leverage the original host's childhood connection with Philip Bennett, using him to inquire about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. The Bennett family you mentioned, is it the one among the three great noble families? Grace Flowers sought confirmation from Martin Woods. Yes, precisely. Martin Woods nodded, continuing, don't worry. Now that there's a lead, my investigator will continue his inquiries and should quickly obtain concrete information. Grace Flowers nodded. The Phoenix Dragon Goblet, seemingly absent from the Great Qing dynasty, finally had a trace. The nationwide intelligence network was indeed formidable. Right, where's my jade wish hairpin? Relieved, Grace Flowers immediately remembered her cherished antique, extending her hand to Martin Woods. I knew you'd ask. Fortunately, I have a good memory and brought it. Martin Woods sighed, retrieving a box from his robes and handing it to Grace Flowers. This little lass was interested in the Phoenix Dragon Goblet first, then the ancient jade wish hairpin, but showed absolutely no interest in him, making him once again doubt his deadly charm over women. Grace Flowers carefully opened the box. As the lid lifted, the jade wish hairpin, carrying the ancient aura of time, appeared before her eyes. This kind of original antiquity couldn't be replicated, Grace Flowers recognized it as genuine with a single glance. Her face filled with admiration and fascination as she turned the jade wish hairpin over in her hands. Grace Flowers murmured, a real jade wish hairpin, I finally get to see one with my own eyes. Click. Just as Grace Flowers reached out to take the jade wish hairpin from the box, a slender hand reached out, snapped the lid shut with a click, and took the box from her. Hey, Grace Flowers instinctively tried to snatch it back, but Martin Woods blocked her hand with his folding fan. Little lass, I said I'd only let you have a look. Now that you've seen it, you should be satisfied. Martin Woods gave a wicked grin. Seeing Grace Flowers' adorable gnashing of teeth, his smile widened. Stingy. Grace Flowers' gaze lingered on the box containing the jade wish hairpin in Martin Woods' hand as she muttered under her breath. Lily Pearl chuckled softly, unable to resist interjecting, Miss Susie Green, this jade wish hairpin is Master's treasure. He doesn't let anyone see it, let alone touch the box. You're so rich, why be so miserly over a single antique? Grace Flowers scoffed. Truly, the richer they are, the stingier they get. This jade wish hairpin is this young master's shame. How can I let others touch it casually? Martin Woods shook the jade wish hairpin in his hand, a flicker of regret crossing his captivating face. Oh my, what shame! Do tell, big brother. Grace Flowers asked curiously. This enchanting man seemed like an impossibly shrewd merchant, yet he also had something shameful. How intriguing. Little lass, are you gloating? Martin Woods shot Grace Flowers an annoyed sidelong glance. Is that even a question? Obviously, I am. Come on, tell me, tell me. Grace Flowers was burning with curiosity about the shame of this incredibly conceited, enchanting man. Lily Pearl covered her mouth with a giggle. Only Miss Susie Green dared to speak so disrespectfully to Master. Any other young lady, upon meeting Master, wouldn't be able to utter a complete sentence, let alone speak so freely. Their eyes would be glued to him in adoration, their souls captivated. Last time, that fake jade wish hairpin you saw, this young Master paid a hefty price for it, thinking it was real. That was the first time this young Master made a mistake, a true humiliation. So, to wash away this shame, this young Master searched the entire Great Gene dynasty to find this real jade wish hairpin. Seeing it reminds me of that humiliating mistake. I seethed with resentment. Martin Woods had possessed exceptional talent in antique appraisal since childhood. Any antique he deemed genuine was absolutely authentic. In the Jianghu, he was a somewhat renowned, mysterious appraisal master. Who would have thought he, who had never made a mistake, would stumble over a jade wish hairpin? Fortunately, he had bought that fake himself. Otherwise, his reputation as the top mysterious appraisal master would have been ruined. Alright, actually, mistaking that fake jade wish hairpin is a common occurrence, nothing to be ashamed of. You can let it go. Grace Flowers chuckled comfortingly, giving Martin Woods a hearty pat on the shoulder with a grin. A distinctly feminine, pure fragrance drifted to Martin Woods' nose. He froze, but before he could inhale again, the petite figure had retreated, the delicate scent fading. A pang of disappointment struck him as the fragrance vanished. Martin Woods recalled the last time, when this little lass leaned over him on the chaise lounge to retrieve the hairpin from the wall. It was this captivating scent that momentarily distracted him, preventing him from catching her when she stumbled. How did you know the jade wish hairpin was a fake? You only glanced at it. Martin Woods shook his head, his expression returning to normal as he smiled inquisitively. Don't you know this young lady is a prodigy in antique appraisal? It's something you grasp, not explain. However, I can tell you that your ability to later discern its falsity is beyond ordinary. So, I truly admire your appraisal skills. Grace Flowers spoke sincerely, not out of consolation. The hairpin was a near-perfect replica, lacking only the breath of antiquity, something only her unique ability could detect. Judging by your demeanor, little lass, that doesn't sound like mere consolation. Martin Woods, rarely receiving such praise from the sharp-tongued girl, felt a flicker of pleasure. TSK, I figured someone as monstrously self-assured as you wouldn't need comforting. This young lady never bothers with unnecessary gestures. Grace Flowers clicked her tongue. Well said, lass. Your words are music to my ears. Martin Woods laughed heartily, his interest in the girl piqued. You think I'm trying to flatter you? Don't get cocky. Grace Flowers scoffed, rising to her feet. She turned towards the door, waving a hand dismissively. I'm off. Any news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, let me know. Much obliged. With that, she exited the room, heading towards the stairs at the end of the hallway. Having been there numerous times, she was familiar with the place, needing no guidance from Lily Pearl, coming and going freely. Martin Woods watched the slender figure disappear, a calculating glint in his alluring eyes, a knowing smile playing on his lips. After a long moment, Martin Woods lowered his gaze to the box containing the jade wish hairpin in his hand. What I desire, I acquire. Lass, with you, I won't fail either. A confident smile spread across Martin Woods' face, his captivating brows flashing with sharp determination. Lily Pearl, seeing her master's rare possessiveness towards a young woman, breathed a silent sigh of relief. She would share this good news with the master and mistress, they would surely be overjoyed. However, neither Martin Woods nor Lily Pearl knew that Grace Flowers wouldn't be tethered to this time and space for anyone. She was merely a passerby, and one day, she would return to her own time. Little did Martin Woods know, his dedicated assistance to Grace Flowers in locating the Phoenix Dragon Goblet was hastening her departure. Were he aware of this truth, regret would surely gnaw at his insides. ### Chapter 55, Directly seeking the person in the study of Serenity Prince Mansion, Justin Lawrence sat in the Grand Master's chair by the table, holding a letter, his expression pensive. Outside, soft footsteps echoed. Susie Green appeared at the door. "Your Highness, you summon me?" Susie Green bowed respectfully, her gaze on the incomparably handsome third prince, her voice soft. "Where is the princess consort?" Justin Lawrence looked up from the letter, his deep eyes fixed on Susie Green. The princess consort went out for a stroll, she should be back soon." Seeing the third prince's expression unchanged, Susie Green felt relieved. She had thought he had summoned her for something important, but it turned out he was asking about the young miss. "When the princess consort returns, tell her to come to the study." Justin Lawrence nodded slightly, his expression calm as he looked out the window. "Yes, Your Highness." Susie Green nodded and withdrew. Susie Green walked towards the main entrance, intending to wait there for the young miss to return and inform her that the prince was looking for her. The young miss had received a letter and gone out, and hadn't returned yet. Based on her usual schedule, she should be back soon. It was just that Justin Lawrence had returned quite early today. Usually, he wouldn't be back until late afternoon, yet today he was back half an hour earlier. At this moment, the sound of a carriage echoed. Susie Green looked over and saw it was indeed the Grace Flowers carriage used when she went out today. The carriage slowed down as it reached the archway, then slowly headed towards the inner chambers. "Young miss, young miss." Susie Green hurried after the carriage, calling inside. The carriage curtain was lifted, revealing Grace Flowers' beautiful face. Seeing Susie Green, she instructed the driver, "Stop. Young miss, His Highness has returned to the mansion. He's in the study and asked me to wait for you to return and tell you to go to the study." As the carriage stopped, Susie Green hurriedly lifted the curtain and spoke to Grace Flowers. Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow slightly. Justin Lawrence had returned so early. He even asked Susie Green to wait here to inform her immediately. She wondered what urgent matter it was. She lightly jumped down from the carriage and said to Susie Green, "All right, I'll go to the study right away." Not seeing Justin, Grace Flowers asked, "Is Justin at the training grounds?" "Yes, the young master is very diligent in his martial arts training. I see his martial arts skills improving day by day. He truly is a martial arts prodigy." Susie Green's face was full of admiration. She had painstakingly practiced martial arts for nearly 10 years, yet she was still not even 1/10 as skilled as the young master, who was only 4 years old. It made her both envious and respectful. "Tell him to train moderately, don't let him succumb to chi deviation." Grace Flowers recalled the martial arts novels she had read, which always featured characters who, due to excessive training, succumbed to chi deviation, becoming neither human nor ghost. She didn't want anything to happen to her adorable little darling. "Yes, then I'll go to the training grounds and tell the young master to rest for a bit." Hearing the words, chi deviation, Susie Green immediately became worried and hurriedly turned to run towards the training grounds. "Take him to bathe first, it's almost dinner time." Grace Flowers instructed Susie Green's hurrying back, watching her hasty figure and couldn't help but smile. Susie Green must be truly worried about Justin succumbing to chi deviation. Smiling, she walked towards the study. Reaching the door, she pushed it open and entered. Seeing Justin Lawrence sitting at the writing desk, Grace Flowers closed the door and walked towards him. "Why did you come back so early today? Susie Green said you were looking for me. Is something the matter?" Grace Flowers sat down in the chair opposite Justin Lawrence and asked curiously. "The Phoenix Dragon Goblet you've been searching for." Justin Lawrence nodded. Hearing the words, Phoenix Dragon Goblet, Grace Flowers was overjoyed and couldn't help but ask hurriedly, "How is it? Is there any news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet?" "Don't rush, let me finish." Justin Lawrence shook his head, looked at Grace Flowers, and asked with slight suspicion, "Besides asking me to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, have you asked anyone else to look for it?" Grace Flowers was startled, remembering that she had asked Martin Woods to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Could Justin Lawrence have had her followed? Why? Grace Flowers frowned, thinking about her every action being monitored, suddenly feeling a bit suffocated. But thinking again, she felt it was impossible. If Justin Lawrence had really had her followed, he would definitely know about her taking the abortion pills. Moreover, the security at Sophia Song's floor wasn't weak, it was impossible for someone to be around without being detected. Thinking of this, Grace Flowers calmed down. Someone else is also looking for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. If you haven't asked anyone to look for it, then it must be someone else. Justin Lawrence said thoughtfully, looking at Grace Flowers, then continued, "Why would someone else be looking for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? What mystery does this Phoenix Dragon Goblet hold? I'm pondering this question." "No need to ponder anymore, I asked someone else to help look for it," Grace Flowers said with a smile, but couldn't help but be startled inwardly. Justin Lawrence actually knew about Martin Woods having people search for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. It seemed his intelligence network couldn't be underestimated. As for the question he raised, it further showed his cautious and sharp thinking. To avoid him investigating Martin Woods and causing trouble, it was better to take all the blame. "Who did you ask for help?" "Those searching seem very professional, not ordinary detectives, but members of a rigorously trained intelligence organization," Justin Lawrence asked. "Susie Green knows young Master Woods, so I asked Susie Green to ask young Master Woods to help look for it." Grace Flowers knew that to dispel Justin Lawrence's suspicions, she couldn't just brush it off. "So that's it. If it's the Woods Intelligence Organization, then they certainly have this level of capability." Justin Lawrence's expression cleared, no longer suspicious. "I thought you had already found the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. It seems I was prematurely happy." Grace Flowers breathed a sigh of relief, thankfully she had managed to deceive him. What she said was also considered true. In front of Martin Woods, she was indeed the maid Susie Green. Even if Justin Lawrence wasn't reassured and went to investigate, he would only find out Susie Green's identity, not hers. "Not yet. Don't worry, as long as the Phoenix Dragon Goblet is in Great Gene Dynasty, even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we'll find it," Justin Lawrence reassured her. Currently, he suspected that this Phoenix Dragon Goblet wasn't in Great Gene Dynasty at all. "Do you mean, the Phoenix Dragon Goblet might not be in Great Gene Dynasty?" Grace Flowers picked up on the implication in Justin Lawrence's words. Thinking of the information Martin Woods had found about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet being in the hands of the Bennett, she couldn't help but frown. It seemed she had to quickly find out whether the Bennett had the Phoenix Dragon Goblet or not. "I'm just suspecting. If it is, there should be clues, but currently the detectives haven't found any information." Justin Lawrence nodded. "If the object wasn't in the basket, no matter how much you reached in, you wouldn't find it. The history books I read record it as an object of Great Gene Dynasty, but whether it's truly in Great Gene Dynasty or not, I'm not entirely sure." Grace Flowers furrowed her brow. "I'll expand the search area," Justin Lawrence said, then asked, "Does the Woods have any news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet?" "I heard from Susie Green that they found information suggesting the Phoenix Dragon Goblet might be with the Bennett, but it's uncertain whether it's true or not." Grace Flowers didn't hide anything, speaking honestly. "The Bennett?" Justin Lawrence pondered for a moment, then said, "All right, we won't give up searching elsewhere. As for the Woods, let's leave it to the Woods." Grace Flowers nodded, thinking to herself that she would go and investigate tomorrow. Looking out the window, the sun had already set. Justin Lawrence said to Grace Flowers, "Go bathe first. It's hot today and you went out, you must be sweating a lot. Bathing and then eating will be more comfortable. Grace Flowers nodded, indeed wanting to bathe. The weather lately was truly hot. It seemed it was about to transition from early summer to midsummer, getting hotter and hotter. Lightly pulling on the hem of her dress, Grace Flowers turned and walked out of the study, just in time to see Ruby Willow carrying 2 cups of tea towards them. Princess Consort, I was just about to bring tea for you and His Highness. Ruby Willow said hurriedly, seeing Grace Flowers coming out of the study. I won't drink any more. Bring the tea to His Highness and then have someone prepare bathwater for me. I want to bathe and wash my hair. Grace Flowers gave her instructions and walked quickly towards her chambers. Ruby Willow nodded, hurriedly brought tea into Justin Lawrence's study, then immediately went to arrange for someone to prepare bathwater. She returned to her chambers, waited for a moment, and saw Ruby Willow send someone in with hot water. Having prepared the bath, just as she was about to undress, she heard Justin and Susie Green outside. Ruby Willow, take the young master to the dining room to wait first, I'll come over there to eat after my bath. Oh, and call Susie Green in to attend to my bath. Grace Flowers instructed Ruby Willow. Yes, Your Highness. Ruby Willow obediently nodded, went out to meet Justin, and then left the chambers. Susie Green locked the door before entering the inner room. Miss, do you have something you want to say to me? Susie Green asked as soon as she entered. Your little head is getting better and better at understanding me, you actually guessed that I have something to ask you. Grace Flowers took off her clothes, stepped into the bathtub, comfortably leaned her head against the edge of the tub, and teased Susie Green in amusement. Of course, Miss never needs anyone to attend to her bath. You dismissed Ruby Willow so I could attend to you, so you must have something to ask me. Susie Green said with a giggle. Not bad, you know how to analyze and draw the correct conclusion. Grace Flowers nodded in satisfaction. Susie Green, under her tutelage, was becoming increasingly adept at analyzing situations at all times. That's natural, I'm inherently extremely intelligent. Susie Green proudly raised her head and said. TSK, give you 3 parts color and you'd open a dye shop. Susie Green, be a little humble. Grace Flowers said with a smile. Thinking about her own problem, she seriously asked, Susie Green, what do you know about the Bennets? The Bennets? Susie Green tilted her head in thought for a moment, then said, the Bennets and the Flowers are noble families, the 2 houses are on good terms, and young Master Bennet and Miss have always been quite close. What specifically do you want to ask? Have you heard of the Bennets having a pair of phoenix dragon goblets? Grace Flowers asked directly. Phoenix dragon goblets? Never heard of them. Miss, you shouldn't ask me, you should ask young Master Bennet directly. He's the most favored eldest son of the Bennets. If the Bennets have something, young Master Bennet will definitely know. Susie Green shook her head and said indifferently. Hearing Susie Green's words, Grace Flowers raised her eyebrows, her eyes shining brightly. Indeed, outsiders see more clearly. Just now, she was still thinking of ways to find out whether the Bennets had the Phoenix Dragon goblets. In fact, just as Susie Green said, asking Philip Bennet directly was the fastest and most accurate way. With Philip Bennet's relationship with the original owner, he certainly wouldn't hide anything. Excellent, she must go see Philip Bennet tomorrow. Having made her decision, Grace Flowers was very happy. Soaking in the water, she took a deep breath, hoping to find news of the Phoenix Dragon goblets at the Bennet's estate. ###Chapter 56, An unfortunate coincidence. 1 cup tea house. Grace Flowers raised her head, gazing at the signboard hanging above the teahouse gate. Only then did she notice the unique and distinctive name, 1 cup tea house. Having visited several times before without paying attention to the name, Grace Flowers stared intently at the sign. Oh, miss, you've arrived. Come in, come in. The storyteller is here today. Please take a seat, I'll go find him for you." The familiar waiter, upon seeing Grace Flowers at the entrance, hurried out to greet her. "Waiter, I'm not here for the storyteller today. I'm here to see you." Grace Flowers, tearing her gaze away from the sign, smiled at the enthusiastic waiter. "See me? Is there something I can help you with, miss? Come in, please sit. If it's within my power, I'll certainly help." The waiter, slightly puzzled, then broke into a wide smile. He'd met this generous young lady a few times, always receiving a handsome tip. Just one look told him she came from a wealthy background. Grace Flowers followed the waiter inside. It was probably a little past 9 o'clock. The tea house wasn't crowded. Those who had come for breakfast had already left, and it was still a while before the lunch crowd, accounting for the current lull. "Miss, would you care for a cup of tea first?" The waiter inquired solicitously after leading Grace Flowers to a seat. "Yes, please." Grace Flowers, realizing she would be waiting for someone, agreed. She couldn't very well just sit there doing nothing. The waiter quickly brought a pot of fine tea, then, holding his tray, asked curiously, "Miss, what is it you need from me?" "Well, waiter, are you free at the moment? I need you to deliver a letter to the Bennett estate." Grace Flowers stated. "Certainly. It's not busy now. We have other staff to attend to the customers. I just need to ask the manager for permission to go out." "But who is this letter for, miss?" The waiter readily agreed. He was more than happy to run errands for this young lady, especially with the anticipation of a generous reward. The thought made his eyes crinkle with pleasure. "Deliver this letter to the eldest young master of the Bennett estate, Philip Bennett. You must deliver it into his hands personally. Tell him it's a letter from Grace Flowers. If he reads the letter, he'll come with you. Just bring him here." Grace Flowers gave detailed instructions, then pulled a letter from her sleeve and handed it to the waiter. "All right, miss, you might have to wait a while. The Bennett estate is in the North City, quite a distance from here," the waiter remarked. Hearing that this young lady had connections with the eldest young master of the Bennets, his attentiveness increased. The Bennett clan was one of the 3 great families. To be acquainted with someone from that clan meant she was no ordinary person. Indeed, this young lady was clearly someone of importance. "Take this silver. Either borrow a horse, or if you can't ride, hire a carriage." Grace Flowers took a silver ingot from her purse and gave it to the waiter. The only modes of transportation here were horseback or carriage. "All right, miss, please wait. I'll be back as quickly as possible." The waiter, accepting the heavy, gleaming silver ingot, went to the counter to ask the manager's permission, then quickly exited. The last time she met Philip Bennett, he had told her he wouldn't be leaving the capital anytime soon and that if she needed to find him, she could send a letter to the Bennett estate. Although Grace Flowers had been here for a while, she didn't know many people. Fortunately, the waiter here was quite helpful and could run errands for her. She didn't want to go find Philip Bennett herself. After all, going as Grace Flowers wouldn't be appropriate. She was a married woman, visiting a single man at his home. Who knew what kind of gossip that would stir up? Especially since she was the newly wedded princess consort of the current 3rd prince, Justin Lawrence, a man in the public eye. Gazing at the kaleidoscope of people outside the window, Grace Flowers silently prayed that Philip could confirm the news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. If so, she only needed to devise a plan to obtain it. Historical records indicate the Phoenix Dragon Goblet is in Justin Lawrence's possession. Thus, if the records are accurate, this pair of goblets will ultimately belong to him. Resting her chin on her hand, Grace Flowers narrowed her eyes, observing the scenery outside while calmly waiting for the waiter to announce Philip's arrival. After waiting for about an hour, she finally heard the sound of the errand boy at the door. Grace Flowers, startled, immediately looked towards the door, just in time to see the waiter enter. However, Philip was not behind him. The waiter rushed in, panting, and stood before Grace Flower's table. Before she could ask, he hurriedly said, "Miss, unfortunately, that young master is not currently at the residence. The servant said he left this morning and won't return for a few days. This letter cannot be delivered to him." He then returned the letter to Grace Flowers. "Are they certain he'll be back in a few days?" Grace Flowers frowned. What bad luck. She sought Philip today, and he left today. The servants there said their young master has set a return date. If nothing unexpected happens, he should be back in a few days. The waiter nodded, also looking disappointed. He had borrowed a horse and ridden as fast as he could, yet he still failed to complete the task the young lady had given him. It seemed there would be no reward. "All right, I've troubled you, waiter." Grace Flowers sighed in resignation. It seemed she either had to find another way to enter the residence and search for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet or wait a few days for Philip's return to inquire. "Miss, this is the remaining silver after I borrowed the horse." The waiter placed the silver on the table. It hadn't even warmed up before it had to be returned. He felt a pang of regret. "Keep it. Consider it payment for delivering the letter." Grace Flowers pushed the silver back towards the waiter and softly said, "Thank you for your help." "This. Miss, it was just a small errand. It's not necessary to give me so much." The waiter was stunned. This silver amounted to several taels, a considerable sum for ordinary people. Yet, this young lady gave it to him without hesitation. "I might need your help again in the future. Please accept it." Grace Flowers took out a few more coins and placed them on the table. "Is this enough to cover the tea?" "Enough, enough." The waiter nodded quickly and said to Grace Flowers, "Miss, my name is Xiao Wu. I'm a few years older than you. You can call me Wu Ji. If you need help in the future and I'm not at the tea house, just tell the owner, and he'll inform me." "All right, I must be going." Grace Flowers nodded and stood up. "Yes, safe travels, Mississippi." Xiao Wu escorted Grace Flowers to the door before returning to his work. Grace Flowers returned to Serenity Prince Mansion and immediately sought out Susie Green. After much deliberation, she felt she couldn't wait for Philip's return to question him. Time waits for no one. She couldn't waste these days doing nothing. She planned to sneak into the residence tonight. If she found the goblet, great. Even if she didn't, at least she would have tried. Susie Green entered the training room and saw Grace Flowers sitting pensively at the table instead of practicing. She hurried over. "Miss, how did it go? Did you find out?" Susie Green asked urgently. "Not yet. Philip hasn't been in the capital these past few days." "Have you ever been to his estate?" Grace Flowers asked Susie Green. In her memories, the original Grace Flowers was deeply cherished by Philip, but she wasn't sure if she had ever visited his estate. Surely, banquets between noble families would involve invitations to other families. With her status as the eldest daughter of the Flowers, the original Grace Flowers should have been invited. However, given how overlooked she was, it was highly likely she hadn't attended any. "I'm your personal maid, Mississippi. Of course, I've accompanied you to the Bennett estate," Susie Green said, looking at Grace Flowers in astonishment. "Miss, have you forgotten?" "Since nearly drowning, my memory has been a bit hazy," Grace Flowers said calmly, rubbing her forehead with a troubled expression. "Oh, so you haven't fully recovered, miss? Are there any lingering effects from that incident? Should we call a physician?" Susie Green's face was filled with concern as she carefully examined Grace Flowers' rosy, vibrant complexion. Since returning to Prince Kang's residence, she hadn't noticed anything amiss with her. Compared to her previous frail appearance, she was now much healthier. "It's nothing serious. There are just some things I can't quite recall, perhaps because it's been so long." Seeing Susie Green's anxiety, Grace Flowers felt a pang of guilt. The maid worried excessively about anything concerning her. I was ostracized by my father before. How would I have had the opportunity to visit the Bennett estate? Visits between noble families, especially among the women, usually occurred during banquets. Private visits like that were rare. Second Madam truly didn't want you to attend. She originally intended to marry Second Miss to young Master Bennet, but who would have thought that he wouldn't pay her any attention? Yet, with you, it was as if you two hit it off instantly. You used to be shy and reserved, Miss, but young Master Bennet enjoyed teasing you and making conversation. So, every time the Bennet family held a banquet, young Master Bennet insisted on your presence, much to the chagrin of Second Madam and Second Mississippi. Susie Green chuckled. In the past, the original Grace Flowers was bullied by them, her status as the legitimate daughter completely disregarded. This was the only thing that made Second Madam and Second Miss envious. The most satisfying thing back then was watching their anger while they remained silent about Philip Bennet's kindness towards Grace Flowers. Understanding dawned on Grace Flowers. She finally grasped why Bella White harbored such resentment towards the original Grace Flowers. One of the reasons was that she had unintentionally stolen the fiancé they had set their sights on. No wonder Bella White had schemed to marry her off. So, you're familiar with the layout of the Bennet estate? Where do you think they usually keep their valuables? Grace Flowers inquired. Well, I accompanied you to the Bennet estate a few times. Moreover, young Master Bennet wasn't fond of banquets. Every time there was one, he would lead you on a tour of the estate, never staying at the banquet itself. So, after a few visits, I became familiar with the layout. Susie Green nodded, then paused, realizing something was amiss. She couldn't understand why Grace Flowers was suddenly asking about this. After a moment of thought, Susie Green's eyes widened in surprise. Miss, could it be that you intend to go to the Bennet estate yourself to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? She exclaimed. Grace Flowers smiled, nodding in approval at Susie Green. The maid was becoming increasingly astute. Chapter 57, A Nighttime Visit to the Bennet Estate Clique. Susie Green's fan clattered to the floor, her jaw hung open for a long moment. Miss, please don't go. The Bennet Estate's security is incredibly tight. They're all top-notch experts. If you're discovered, it'll be incredibly dangerous. Moreover, the eldest young Master Bennet isn't home. If you're caught, there'll be no one to speak for you. Susie Green, deeply worried, tried to dissuade Grace Flowers from this mad plan. The young miss, once so timid that a simple stroll around the Bennet estate with the eldest young master had frightened her, now spoke of infiltrating it in the dead of night. She'd gone mad. Then draw me a layout of the Bennet estate. Mark where the security is tightest, so I can avoid those areas. That way, it'll be safer. Grace Flowers spoke calmly, a stark contrast to Susie Green's anxious expression. Miss, truly, you mustn't. It's far too dangerous. Susie Green shook her head vehemently, determined not to draw the map and enable her mistress's reckless venture. I must go. Besides, I've completely forgotten the layout of the Bennet mansion. If you don't draw it for me, I'll just have to fumble around in the dark. Grace Flowers shrugged. Seeing Susie Green's conflicted expression, she smiled slyly. Susie Green grimaced, waging a fierce internal battle. To draw for her mistress was to endanger her, not to draw for her mistress was also to endanger her. Seeing the resolute look on Grace Flowers' face, she knew her mind was made up. Well? Have you decided whether to draw it for me? Grace Flowers asked with a smile. I know. If I told you my martial arts skills surpass Justin's by several levels, do you think I'd still fear those first-rate experts? Grace Flowers chuckled, raising an eyebrow. She had only displayed her skills once at the Flowers and hadn't revealed them since, but she had diligently continued her training. Her current abilities far exceeded her previous ones. Miss, I know you're formidable. That time at the Flowers, you injured the second miss with just a drop of water. I know you're not to be underestimated. But the Bennett Mansion guards are no pushovers either. What's more, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. You're alone. Though Susie Green knew her mistress's current skills were not what they once were, she remained deeply worried. I'll do my best to avoid them. I won't engage them directly. Don't worry. Draw it in detail, that will help me avoid areas with many guards. Grace Flowers stood, patted Susie Green's shoulder, and said, "Come, let's go to the study." Susie Green, her face etched with worry, followed Grace Flowers towards the study. In the study, Susie Green drew the layout of the Bennett Mansion from memory, making it as detailed as possible. Finished, she looked up at Grace Flowers with a troubled expression. "Miss, I don't know how to write. I intended to label it for you, but, it's all right. I'll write. You tell me what each place is called, and explain who lives there or what it's used for, and I'll have a general idea." Grace Flowers took the brush from Susie Green, smiling. Susie Green nodded, pointing to each area on the drawing and explaining its purpose and occupants to Grace Flowers. As Grace Flowers listened to Susie Green speak each familiar yet distant name, alongside the topographical diagram, the layout of a building seemed to materialize in her mind. If the original owner had been to the Bennett estate, there should be a memory. The image of the mansion appearing in her mind now must be the Bennett estate. Now, with Susie Green's explanation and the memories of the rooms' names stimulating the remaining memories, perhaps when she arrives at the Bennett estate, all of the original owner's memories will be restored. Thinking of this, Grace Flowers felt more at ease. "That's all there is, but miss, we don't know where the Phoenix Dragon Goblet is. This building is so big, how do you plan to find it?" Susie Green, looking at the map drawn on the large Schwanching paper, frowned. "Not we, just I. You don't need to go." Grace Flowers shook her head at Susie Green. Sneaking into someone else's house at night to do shady things, how could she bring this foolish Susie Green along? Moreover, Susie Green's martial arts skills were nothing to brag about, following along would definitely cause a commotion and expose their whereabouts. It was safer to go alone. "Miss, it's too dangerous to go alone. I can stay behind and cover you," Susie Green hurriedly said. No matter what, she couldn't let the miss take risks alone. "All right, it's decided then. I'll go by myself. You stay put in the prince's mansion. You don't need to worry about anything else." Grace Flowers rolled up the wind-dried painting, pondering how to sneak out of the prince's mansion tonight. She could perhaps try her pressure point technique. Recently, she had started learning pressure point techniques and knew a few acupoints, but she had never used them on anyone before. It just so happened that she could experiment on Justin Lawrence. While he was unguarded, she could knock him unconscious with pressure points. Good, just do it. Grace Flowers cheerfully decided. Therefore, to better memorize the layout of the Bennett estate, Grace Flowers opened the map again, committing the interior layout to memory. The moon ascended to the tips of the willow branches. The Serenity Prince mansion was quiet, with only occasional groups of guards patrolling softly everywhere. A small, black-clad figure, not far behind the guards, quietly slipped past. The guards didn't detect any movement at all. It wasn't that they lacked vigilance, but the small figure's movements were like a wraith, making them undetectable. Grace Flowers watched the oblivious guards continue forward, a smug smile appearing in her clear eyes. Glancing back at her in Justin Lawrence's bedroom, thinking of Justin Lawrence inside, rendered unconscious by her pressure point technique, her smile deepened. Unexpectedly, her first attempt at using pressure points was so accurate. Justin Lawrence, who was originally full of passion, had been knocked unconscious by her. She wondered if this would have any adverse effects on Justin Lawrence. After all, unmet needs could be harmful to the body. The guards had left the courtyard. Grace Flowers didn't have time to think too much and immediately flew out. Because she knew the guards' patrol times and routes, she easily evaded their strict security, which would be impenetrable to others. Flipping over the wall, Grace Flowers saw the horse that had been prepared. With a single leap, she jumped onto its back. Heels dug into the horse's flanks, whip raised, the steed shot off like an arrow loosed from its bow, tearing through the silent night towards the Bennett mansion in the north of the city. Grace Flowers followed Susie Green's directions, urging her horse to a swift gallop. Fortunately, her prior riding experience, and considerable skill at it, allowed her to easily control the mount. She quickly arrived before the gates of a grand estate. The night was still and quiet, the streets deserted save for the occasional calls of the watchman. Grace Flowers saw the name Bennett on the lanterns of the grand house, and then looked up at the plaque above the main gate. Bold calligraphy proclaimed it the Bennett Mansion. The sight of the gate triggered a flicker of recognition. This was the place. Memories belonging to the original owner of her body began to stir. Reining in her horse, Grace Flowers led it into the shadows, dismounting in a discreet location. She tethered the animal to a nearby wooden post. Just beyond a wall, 1 to 2 meters high, lay the Bennett mansion. Grace Flowers pressed her ear to the wall, listening intently for any sounds within. Hearing no sign of patrolling guards, she swiftly scaled the wall. Lying flat on top, she looked down into a courtyard. The sight of it fully restored her memories of the Bennett mansion. She flipped over the wall and landed lightly. A nearby lantern, though dim, provided enough illumination to discern her surroundings in the night. Grace Flowers surveyed the area, closed her eyes briefly, and set her sights on the courtyard belonging to the head of the Bennett family. The Bennett patriarch, Samuel Bennett, Philip Bennett's father, had a well-known penchant for collecting unusual objects. Regardless of their value, if he found something aesthetically pleasing or intriguing, he would acquire it. The Phoenix Dragon Valley cups, with their exquisite craftsmanship, would undoubtedly catch his eye. Therefore, the Phoenix Dragon Valley cups were very likely within the Bennett mansion. Relying on her recovered memories, Grace Flowers evaded patrolling guards and made her way directly to the West Chamber, Samuel Bennett's residence. Security around the West Chamber was even tighter, with groups of guards constantly on patrol. Grace Flowers picked up a stone and threw it into the distance, creating a distraction. The guards, hearing the noise, exchanged glances and split into two groups. One rushed towards the source of the sound, while the other remained on patrol. Grace Flowers threw another stone in the opposite direction, drawing the remaining guards away. With the guards finally diverted, Grace Flowers seized the opportunity and slipped through the nearest doorway. The door was unlocked, merely closed. Without hesitation, Grace Flowers pushed it open, slipped inside, and quickly closed it behind her. She breathed a sigh of relief. The security here was remarkably tight, even more so than the prince's estate. Were it not for her agility, she wouldn't have been able to infiltrate so easily. In the faint glow of the lantern hanging on the outside wall, she surveyed the room. It was an ordinary room, though the dishes and furnishings were exquisite, some even bizarre, likely acquired by Samuel Bennett from who knows where. Grace Flowers gently rummaged through everything, but there was no sign of the Phoenix Dragon Valley cups. She had been to the West Chamber before. In her memory, this wing was empty. Did she have to search every single room? This task seemed rather overwhelming. Chapter 58, being followed. The peculiar items Samuel Bennett collected were not hidden away but displayed for viewing or decoration. Therefore, if he truly possessed the Phoenix Dragon Valley cups, searching the entire West Chamber should suffice, unless they were exceptionally precious. Samuel Bennett would only store such treasures to prevent theft. However, the Phoenix Dragon Valley cups, in the eyes of the great Qin dynasty, were not yet considered antiques. Surely, Samuel Bennett merely used them as a tea set. In that case, she only needed to search among the tea sets placed within the rooms. Thinking this, Grace Flowers shook her head. Regardless, she would search all these empty rooms first. While the guards were away, she swiftly opened the door, slipped out, and hid behind a large, round pillar in the corridor. Then, she moved to the adjacent room, checking it thoroughly, but found nothing. After checking all the empty rooms, Grace Flowers still hadn't found the Phoenix Dragon Valley cups. Having searched the main hall and the guest rooms meticulously, Grace Flowers crouched in a dark corner, frowning. Now, only Samuel Bennett's bedroom remained unsearched, but it was the most heavily guarded, with 3 or 4 guards standing motionless before the door. Entering through the main door was impossible, she could only try the windows, hoping they weren't locked. This room had quite a few windows, and conveniently, there was one right where she was crouching. But that window was closed. She didn't know if it was locked. It seemed Samuel Bennett's martial arts weren't exceptionally advanced. With her skills, as long as she didn't make any noise, he wouldn't detect her. Grace Flowers took a deep breath, bent down, and darted to the window with lightning speed. The guards didn't notice her. Grace Flowers breathed a sigh of relief and gently opened the window. Fortunately, it wasn't locked. She peered inside. This window led to the outer chamber, and she immediately saw a tea set on a round table. The tea set was fine, but it wasn't the dragon and phoenix cups she sought. Typically, in this era, only the outer chamber of a bedroom would have a tea set displayed. Seeing the tea set, Grace Flowers was disappointed. Heavens, she had searched the entire west chamber and still hadn't found them. Was this some kind of cruel joke? It was time to return. It seemed she would have to wait until tomorrow night to search the other places. Grace Flowers evaded the patrolling guards, left the west chamber, and followed the same path back to where she had tied her horse. Just as she leaped onto her horse, Grace Flowers felt something was amiss. Preoccupied with finding the dragon and phoenix cups, she hadn't paid attention to her surroundings. Now, outside, she felt as if someone was watching her. She looked around but saw no suspicious figures. Perhaps she was being overly paranoid. Grace Flowers shook her head and spurred her horse into a gallop toward Serenity Prince Mansion. As soon as she left the wall, a tall figure dressed in black, face concealed by black cloth, appeared on the wall. Deep black eyes followed the small figure on horseback, their gaze flashing before disappearing behind the wall. Grace Flowers quietly returned to Serenity Prince Mansion and slipped into her bedroom. She saw Justin Lawrence still lying on the bed with his eyes closed. The pressure points she had struck would last for 3 watches, meaning he would awaken around 6 or 7 in the morning. Stowing her black nightclothes under the bed, Grace Flowers climbed in softly. Seeing Justin Lawrence still fast asleep, she sighed in relief. After a half-night's work, she was truly exhausted, and the moment her head hit the pillow, she was out like a light. For several nights, Grace Flowers used the same tactic, striking Justin Lawrence's pressure points to render him unconscious before searching the various courtyards of the Bennett estate for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, but to no avail. She grew increasingly certain she was being watched every night. This individual possessed formidable martial arts skills, profound and unfathomable, someone even she, with her 7th-level cultivation, might not be able to defeat. Since the first night she vaguely sensed someone's presence, she'd been especially alert to her surroundings. Indeed, someone was watching her, but this person never made a move, only observing her quietly from a distance, never revealing themselves. Only after she left Serenity Prince Mansion, went to the Bennett estate, and returned did this mysterious figure disappear. Who could it be? It seemed this mysterious watcher meant her no harm, acting more like a protector. Last night, she'd accidentally made a noise outside, attracting the guards' attention. Fortunately, the mysterious figure created a diversion at the other end, distracting the guards and allowing her to escape. Grace Flowers narrowed her eyes, reclining lazily on the chaise lounge, pondering the identity of this enigmatic individual. She'd only been here a month or 2, yet mysterious figures kept appearing. She still didn't know who gifted her the Dark Legacy swords. Wait a minute, Grace Flowers' eyes widened. Could the person watching her these past few nights be the same person who gave her the swords? If it were the same person, it would make sense. Otherwise, the sudden emergence of so many mysterious figures was truly disorienting, like being lost in a fog. Forget it, she wouldn't dwell on this enigmatic person any longer. Even knowing they lurked in the shadows, their martial arts were so profound and unfathomable that she could do nothing. In the blink of an eye, they'd vanish. Capturing them for questioning was impossible. Right now, she needed to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Once found, regardless of how many mysterious figures lurked in the shadows, she would return to the modern era. She wondered if Philip Bennet had returned. She'd turned the Bennet estate upside down without finding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. She didn't even know if it was truly here. Her only option was to find Philip Bennet and ask. It had been several days since Philip Bennet was expected back. He should have arrived by now. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted Grace Flower's thoughts. She looked up to see Jason Lawrence running excitedly towards her. "Whoa there, little young master, slow down, you'll fall. Watch where you're going." Behind Jason Lawrence, Susie Green trailed, her face etched with worry. "Mother, Susie Green says there's some kind of festival today. Lots of exciting things to see in the streets. Let's go." Jason Lawrence reached Grace Flowers, his face alight with anticipation, showing her a small snake. "Little Spirit says it wants to go out too. It'll be so lively. Let's go." He tugged at her hand, pleading. "Susie Green, what festival is it today?" Grace Flowers inquired, observing Susie Green rushing towards her, breathless. "Today is the 1st of June, it's the half-year festival, miss," Susie Green replied. "Half-year festival?" Grace Flowers raised a skeptical eyebrow. She'd never heard of this half-year festival before, but upon hearing Susie Green mention it, the concept surfaced from her memories. The half-year festival in the Great Jin Dynasty was a highly regarded celebration. If the Lunar New Year was considered the major festival, then this half-year festival could be seen as a minor one. The people of the Great Jin Dynasty, on this day, would use glutinous rice and rice flour to make half-year cakes. After offering these cakes to the gods and ancestors, the entire family would partake, praying for smooth sailing and fulfillment in all endeavors. Markets were naturally more bustling than usual. Essentially, everyone would stroll through the marketplace, hoping to wash away bad luck and invite good fortune. Many would also visit temples to worship, and today was also a day for family reunions. No wonder there seemed to be fewer servants around today. "Have they all gone to the market?" Grace Flowers asked. Usually, at this hour, servants would be bustling about, but she had been here for half an hour and hadn't seen many. "I heard Ruby Willow say that our prince is a benevolent man. All the servants at Serenity Prince Mansion are allowed to request leave on this day to reunite with their families. So, early this morning, many servants requested leave and went home. The remaining servants are those who have no home to return to," Susie Green explained, unable to conceal her excitement. "Miss, shall we also go to the market? Seeing how well you've been living lately, we should visit a temple and offer thanks to the gods for their blessings and for ensuring everything goes smoothly for you." "You're so young and yet so superstitious," Grace Flowers remarked. She didn't believe in ghosts or gods and wasn't particularly interested in visiting temples. "Miss, you can't speak carelessly like that. Offending the deities will bring bad luck." Susie Green hastily clasped her hands together, muttering, "Please, divine beings, don't hold it against her. Our miss just misspoke, she didn't mean to offend. Please, in your immense generosity, forgive her." "Mother, let's go to the market," Jason tugged at Grace Flowers' hand. He hadn't been out to play in a long time. "That's right, miss, let's go out for a stroll. We haven't had the chance to go out before, and now that we do, let's go," Susie Green chimed in, encouraging her. All right, we'll go to the market," Grace Flowers conceded. She thought that she didn't need to visit the Bennet estate tonight and could take them to the market instead. It would be a chance to see the half-year festival customs here. The original owner's memories of the half-year festival only consisted of the holiday itself, not of bustling markets or temple worship. Oh, brilliant. Let's go right away. Jason Lawrence clapped his hands, excitedly jumping up and down. Susie Green, equally enthusiastic, quickly said, "Then I'll go and call for the carriage." Just as she turned to leave, she paused and hesitantly asked, "Miss, may Ruby Willow come along? I feel sorry for her. This morning, I saw her watching the other sisters packing to go home, and she looked so sad." "Yes, call her," Grace Flowers nodded. If today was the half-year festival, then Philip Bennett must have returned to the capital to reunite with his family. Even if she had arranged to meet him today, he probably wouldn't have time. She would have to reschedule for tomorrow. "Then I'll go and get Ruby Willow," Susie Green cheerfully replied, turning to briskly arrange the carriage and summon Ruby Willow. The entire group boarded the carriage and headed straight for the bustling streets. Upon arrival, the streets were indeed livelier than usual. Because today was not only for visiting temples and worshipping Buddha, but also for ancestor veneration, many shops displayed offerings, incense, paper, and votive objects. Many people carried offerings, their faces beaming with joy, truly capturing the festive atmosphere. "Miss, are we really not going to the temple to worship Buddha? Offering a bit of incense and praying would be good." Susie Green, looking at the offerings to the deities, appeared eager and longed to participate in the rituals. "Yes, Princess. You are the mistress of the prince's mansion, worshipping Buddha will bless our mansion with peace." Ruby Willow also chimed in with encouragement. "You two go and worship. I'll give you silver to buy offerings and worship on behalf of Serenity Prince Mansion." "I won't go, I'll stroll around with Jason." Grace Flowers took out a small silver ingot, gave it to Susie Green, and spoke to them. Although Susie Green and Ruby Willow really wanted to pull Grace Flowers along to the temple to worship Buddha, after spending time with her, they knew her resolute nature and didn't press the matter further. They went together to buy offerings and then headed towards the temple at the end of the street. Chapter 59, A Chance Mid-Year Festival Encounter. Grace Flowers strolled through the streets with Jason Lawrence. Due to the large crowds, she had to carry Jason Lawrence, otherwise, the little tyke would surely get lost in the throng. "Mother, please put me down. I'm heavy. If you get crushed, I'll be heartbroken." Jason Lawrence fidgeted in Grace Flowers' arms. Although he could see more things being carried, he still felt uncomfortable. Jason, have you been skipping meals again? You seem to have lost weight." Grace Flowers smiled, reaching out to pinch Jason Lawrence's chubby cheeks. The little bun-like face didn't seem as round as before. "No, I haven't. Ever since Susie Green arrived, she makes me finish a whole bowl of rice every day. It's terrifying." Jason Lawrence pouted, his face gloomy as he complained. He wanted to report Susie Green for not caring about a child's opinions and forcing him to do things he didn't like. "Really? No wonder you seem a bit taller. It turns out it's thanks to Susie Green making you eat every day. It seems I must reward Susie Green handsomely." Grace Flowers joked. Although Susie Green knew Jason Lawrence wasn't her son, but a strange child who'd found parents along the way, she still cared deeply for him and looked after him attentively. "Mother, you're aiding and abetting evil. How wicked!" Jason Lawrence exclaimed indignantly. The innocent childish voice sounded adorable. Grace Flowers couldn't help but laugh, looking at Jason Lawrence's little face with puffed cheeks and wide eyes, her amusement growing. "Little rascal, how could your mother be aiding and abetting evil?" Suddenly, a deep, magnetic voice tinged with laziness sounded from behind. Grace Flowers turned around, holding Jason Lawrence, and a handsome, unrestrained face came into view. It was clearly Philip Bennett. "Oh my, mother, it's Uncle!" Jason Lawrence exclaimed upon seeing Philip Bennett. "Come here, let Uncle carry you. With this plump little body, you'll crush your mother. Philip Bennet extended his hands towards Jason Lawrence, glancing at Grace Flowers, who seemed to have put on some weight and was no longer as frail as before, and raised an eyebrow with a smile. No need, I can carry him. Grace Flowers smiled. What a coincidence. She could ask Philip Bennet about the Phoenix Dragon goblet later. It seemed this trip out was the right decision. Little Grace, when did you become so formal with me? Philip Bennet raised an eyebrow, forcibly taking Jason Lawrence from Grace Flowers' arms. The little girl who used to trail after him, chattering non-stop only in his presence, now felt distant and polite after 3 years. Philip, hearing this familiar address, stirred unfamiliar emotions within Grace Flowers. The original owner's feelings surged, a foreign current within her. Shaking her head, she tried to dispel the alien sentiment. One body, no, one brain holding 2 sets of memories, the previous owner's emotions still influencing her. Such a bizarre situation made her feel like she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Wow, compared to Uncle, Mother is short. Lifted by the already tall Philip Bennet, Jason Lawrence's elevated perspective gave him a wider view, prompting him to disdainfully comment on Grace Flowers' height. What do you know? Your mother is petite, not short. Children who don't understand aesthetics shouldn't talk nonsense. Grace Flowers glared at Jason Lawrence. This boy was truly extroverted. Mother, you said we must bravely face our shortcomings. You are clearly shorter than Uncle. Jason Lawrence declared, his words surprisingly articulate for a 4-year-old. Philip Bennet, watching the nominal mother and son bicker, couldn't help but chuckle, amused by Grace Flowers and Jason Lawrence's exchange. Brother Bennet. A gentle female voice called from ahead. Grace Flowers looked over to see an elaborately dressed young woman with a gentle demeanor approaching them. Her gaze, fixed on Philip Bennet, held unconcealed admiration. Miss Carter. Philip Bennet's expression remained roguishly carefree upon seeing the young woman, his usual smirk unwavering. What a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet you here. Miss Carter's heart pounded at the sight of Philip Bennet's handsome face and captivating smile. Brother Fong, if you have a friend, Justin and I will go elsewhere. We won't disturb you. Adhering to the principle of not being a third wheel, Grace Flowers decided to take Justin on a detour, avoiding Miss Carter's occasional, icy glares. It's all right, where do you want to go? I'll go with you. Seemingly oblivious to the other woman, Philip Bennet gently asked Grace Flowers. We're just strolling. Grace Flowers smiled wryly. What was Philip Bennet doing? He clearly knew the young woman who admired him already saw her as a rival, yet he acted unusually kind and close to her. Miss Carter, we'll be going now. Philip Bennet addressed Miss Carter before turning to leave. Brother Bennet, may I stroll with you? It would be more lively with more people. Though Miss Carter appeared gentle, her words were assertive, leaving no room for refusal. Miss, we should return now. The 2 maidservants behind Miss Carter hurriedly whispered. Miss Carter turned her head and gave the 2 maidservants a cold glance, causing them to fearfully lower their heads, not daring to speak another word. Grace Flowers rubbed her forehead with a headache. She had clearly been used as a shield by Philip Bennet. Seeing the other young lady's increasingly hostile gaze, she couldn't help but silently look at Philip Bennet. Brother, I'm a married woman, you know. Using a married woman as a shield, is that all right? All right, you 2 go ahead and stroll. I'll wait here for my maidservants, lest they arrive and can't find us. Grace Flowers, not interested in getting involved in this matter, hugged Matthew Flowers and spoke to Philip Bennet. All right then, I'll wait here with you. Philip Bennet shrugged, a carefree smile appearing on his face as he said to Miss Carter, We won't be strolling for now, Miss Carter. Please feel free to continue, we won't see you off. I'm also a bit tired. In that case, I'll rest here for a moment before strolling. Miss Carter concealed her displeasure and spoke gently to Philip Bennet. Hearing this, Grace Flowers immediately broke out in a cold sweat. This young lady's tenacity was truly more professional than an entertainment reporter. Even though Philip Bennet had so clearly tried to dismiss her, she completely ignored it. Such a level of pursuit, Grace Flowers truly admired. No wonder Philip Bennet wanted to use her as a shield. Being pursued by such a persistent young lady, Grace Flowers felt a bit of sympathy for him. "Matthew, let's go sit over there for a bit." Seeing a pavilion not far away, Grace Flowers paid no more attention to them and carried Matthew Flowers towards it. "Grace, wait for me." Seeing Grace Flowers quickly leave, Philip Bennet immediately chased after her, reaching her side and pleading in a low voice, "Help me get rid of this woman." Miss Carter watched the intimate gestures between Philip Bennet and Grace Flowers, her face darkening. She angrily stomped her foot, but still couldn't help but follow them. Grace Flowers glanced at Philip Bennet, bluntly refusing, "Do you think I have nothing better to do than meddle in your affairs? Don't drag me into this. I don't want to be seen as a rival by that young lady. Little lass, I've helped you plenty in the past. Can't you help me with this small matter?" Philip Bennet was choked by Grace Flowers' decisive refusal. When did this little lass become so hard-hearted? Is this a small matter? This is a matter concerning my reputation. You should know that I'm a married woman, right? Grace Flowers entered the pavilion, found a place to sit, and placed Matthew beside her. "You're right, I wasn't thinking. You and Miss Carter might encounter each other in certain situations in the future. If she truly believes it, it will affect your reputation." Philip Bennet reconsidered, realizing he had indeed been thoughtless. A woman's reputation was more important than her life. Grace Flowers looked at Philip Bennet, expressing approval for his willingness to admit his mistake. At least he was an honorable gentleman who wouldn't damage another's reputation for his own benefit. By now, Miss Carter had reached the pavilion. With a forced smile on her beautiful face, she sat down next to Grace Flowers and, forcing another smile, asked, "My name is Sophia Carter. May I ask how I should address you?" Grace Flowers offered a polite nod and a smile to Sophia Carter, but didn't answer her question. Instead, she serenely turned to gaze at the river below the pavilion, clearly not interested in getting close to Sophia Carter, who was obviously trying to investigate her rival. "Oh, what a cute little brother. Is this your younger brother, miss?" Seeing Grace Flowers ignoring her, Sophia Carter felt a little slighted, but quickly plastered on a smile and turned to Jason Lawrence, who was sitting next to Grace Flowers. "Big sis must be really curious about who my big sister is to this uncle, right?" Jason Lawrence looked up at Sophia Carter, his round, dark eyes sparkling with an innocent, childlike smile. Grace Flowers had expected Justin to refute Sophia Carter's misunderstanding about him being her younger brother. Unexpectedly, the little rascal played along. He usually called her mother incessantly. Looking at the seemingly innocent and guileless little darling, she detected a mischievous glint hidden in his small face, knowing Justin was up to something again. Struck by Jason Lawrence's words, Sophia Carter blushed, glancing at Philip Bennet. Seeing him completely oblivious to her, her embarrassment morphed into disappointment. "My big sister is this uncle's aunt," Jason Lawrence declared, tilting his head with utmost seriousness. "What? Are you serious?" Sophia Carter gasped, staring at Grace Flowers in disbelief. "Your sister is Bennet's. Impossible. Brother Bennet isn't even married." "That's right, children don't lie. I am indeed the aunt of my future brother-in-law. He and my elder sister are childhood sweethearts, already betrothed, just waiting for an auspicious date to wed." Grace Flowers glared at Jason Lawrence. This kid was really something, lying without batting an eye. "You. I don't believe you. You must be tricking me." Humph, Sophia Carter's mind reeled. She jumped up, her face contorted in anger, and stormed out of the pavilion. Chapter 60, Strolling together. Sophia Carter hadn't run far from the pavilion when she bumped into Susie Green and Ruby Willow, who had just finished their prayers. Susie Green watched Sophia Carter steady herself and continue running, puzzled. Why was Sophia Carter with the young mistress? Mistress, how do you know Sophia Carter? Susie Green hurried towards the pavilion, asking urgently. She then noticed Philip Bennet leaning against a pillar and suddenly understood. Oh, so young Master Bennet is here. No wonder Sophia Carter is here too. What's wrong? Do you know the Sophia Carter we just saw? Grace Flowers, seeing Susie Green's expression shift from confusion to understanding, asked with a smile. Yes, I do. The whole capital knows Sophia Carter admires young Master Bennet. I didn't see young Master Bennet just now, so I thought Miss Carter was with you, mistress. Susie Green was quite familiar with Philip Bennet, so she spoke freely in his presence. This Sophia Carter is the eldest daughter of the Carter family, one of the two great families of the imperial court. She has admired Philip Bennet since childhood, but he doesn't reciprocate her feelings. It's a classic case of unrequited love. Although the elders of both families are pleased with each other's status and wish for an alliance through marriage, Philip Bennet's feelings cannot be forced. Samuel Bennet is also a very open-minded father, not one to pressure his children into doing things they dislike, so the matter of marriage has been left alone. She's such a beautiful young woman with a good family background. Why don't you want her? Grace Flowers asked curiously. Honestly, Sophia Carter wasn't bad looking. Mother, that fierce sister, Uncle surely won't want her. Jason Lawrence chimed in, pouting with a disdainful expression. Speaking of which, little one, you're growing up, yet you lie so smoothly at such a young age, making up stories so well. Didn't I tell you to be a good, honest child? Grace Flowers recalled how Jason Lawrence's single sentence had driven Sophia Carter away, and immediately redirected her attention to him. Disciplining her son was more important, she truly had no interest in Philip Bennet's romantic affairs. That sister kept glaring at Mother, so hateful. Mother didn't provoke her, I was teaching her a lesson. Jason Lawrence showed no remorse, justifying his actions. I have to protect Mother. You said a true man doesn't hit girls, so I used words. It's her fault for bullying Mother. Grace Flowers felt both amused and touched. This son she'd picked up along the way truly treated her as his own mother, implementing a protective policy, not allowing her to suffer any injustice. What? Sophia Carter bullied Miss? Young Master, how did she bully Miss? Susie Green, upon hearing this, immediately became agitated, urgently questioning Jason Lawrence with an expression that suggested she wanted to seek revenge. She kept glaring at Mother. I think she likes Uncle, so I provoked her. Don't worry, Susie Green, I've avenged Mother, I made her leave. Jason Lawrence grinned triumphantly. Little one, aren't you a bit too precocious? Grace Flowers reaffirmed her suspicion. This little fellow must have transmigrated from the modern era. How could ancient children understand the concept of liking someone? Modern children, however, were indeed precocious, their minds filled with strange notions. I know a lot of things, Mother. If there's anything you don't understand later, you can ask me. Jason Lawrence nodded seriously, trying to appear humble, but he couldn't suppress his proud expression. After all, he was still a child, unable to maintain a deep, composed demeanor, nor could he hide his thoughts. This little fellow is truly interesting, I like him. Philip Bennet looked at Jason Lawrence's rosy cheeks and adorable expression, unable to resist laughing heartily. He said to Grace Flowers, little lass, you've truly picked up a treasure. How about giving this little fellow to me? Get lost, my son isn't free. Grace Flowers scoffed disdainfully, glancing at Ruby Willow. It seemed now wasn't the time to ask Philip Bennet about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, but at least she knew he had returned to the capital. Then take this little fellow out more often, how adorable. Philip Bennet had truly never seen such a milk-scented, tiny child act like a wise old man, like a little adult, both clever and well-behaved. Uncle, You absolutely mustn't have children with that sister. If you have children with her, they definitely won't be as adorable as me, they'll definitely be fierce and ugly monsters. Jason Lawrence wrinkled his nose. Jason Lawrence's childish words made Grace Flowers, Susie Green, and Ruby Willow burst into laughter, while Philip Bennett chuckled wryly. He was trying to avoid Sophia Carter. How could he possibly have children with her? He said to Jason Lawrence with a wry smile, "Little one, are you cursing your uncle?" "I'm reminding Uncle," Jason Lawrence said with a serious expression. "All right, Uncle appreciates your reminder. To thank you, how about Uncle carries you for a stroll?" Jason Lawrence chuckled heartily, approaching the other Jason Lawrence, bending down to lift him onto his shoulders. "Wow, I'm taller than Uncle," Jason Lawrence exclaimed excitedly. Being this high up allowed him to see so far. Observing Jason Lawrence's enthusiasm, Grace Flowers smiled. It was rare to witness Justin so playful, like other children his age. The child was always mature beyond his years, completely lacking the childishness of his peers, unless he was deliberately feigning it. Philip Bennett led Jason Lawrence out of the pavilion. After walking a short distance, he noticed Grace Flowers hadn't followed. Turning back, he called out, "Why are you still sitting there? Come on, let's stroll through the streets." His tone was utterly natural, as if he always called for Grace Flowers to accompany him this way. His demeanor was carefree and unconcerned with worldly matters, yet it concealed an affection akin to that for a younger sister. Grace Flowers was momentarily stunned. An image flashed through her mind. A handsome youth turned, gazing towards a shy young girl not far away. "Why are you still standing there dazed? Follow me." The youth called out to the girl, his tone equally natural. In his eyes, a loving smile shone, like an older brother towards his younger sister. This image was a scene from many years ago, when Philip Bennett was by her predecessor's side. These scenes were deeply etched in her memory, causing Grace Flowers to recall them every time she encountered Philip Bennett. "Miss, hurry up and follow. Otherwise, young Master Bennett will scold you," Susie Green nudged the dazed Grace Flowers, urging her. "Your Highness, it's getting late. We should return," Ruby Willow suddenly spoke, glancing at Philip Bennett, who was still waiting for Grace Flowers. She couldn't help but frown. "We've only just come out. Why are we going back so soon?" Susie Green looked at Ruby Willow, puzzled. "Ruby Willow, didn't you also want to stroll through the streets for good luck to ward off bad fortune? We haven't even started strolling yet. Why are you in such a hurry to go back?" It seemed that after seeing young Master Bennett, Ruby Willow's expression had become somewhat unusual. Ruby Willow looked at Grace Flowers, wanting to say something but hesitating, her words catching in her throat. Grace Flowers looked at Ruby Willow and said gently, "Ruby Willow, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to hesitate. I beg your Highness's forgiveness. I know that saying this is presumptuous, but I speak only for your Highness's benefit." Ruby Willow bit her lip, looking at Grace Flowers's gentle expression, and then, gritting her teeth, she whispered, "Although your Highness is already married, strolling through the streets with a man like this isn't quite proper. If others discover your Highness's identity, I fear they will gossip." Hearing Ruby Willow's worries, Susie Green couldn't help but laugh. She took Ruby Willow's hand and said with a smile, "Ruby Willow, you're overthinking it. Our Miss and young Master Bennett have been playmates since childhood, closer than even siblings. Many people know that young Master Bennett has always treated our Miss like a younger sister. I can assure you, young Master Bennett truly regards our Miss as his own sister, absolutely nothing more. So, you can rest assured." Grace Flowers looked at Susie Green, raising an eyebrow. Indeed, it seemed that Philip Bennett had always regarded her predecessor as a younger sister. Perhaps it was because her predecessor was often bullied, and Philip Bennett, unable to bear it, treated her kindly out of a protective instinct for the weak. Over time, this developed into a sibling-like affection. Moreover, he seemed oblivious to her predecessor's romantic feelings for him. Speaking of her past life, she truly kept her secrets well, perhaps due to being bullied since childhood. She was cautious in everything she did, even her feelings for Philip Bennet were kept hidden. Let alone Philip Bennet, even Susie Green, who was always by her side, didn't realize her past self liked him. The current Grace Flowers couldn't help but feel fortunate that her past self was timid and insecure, always burying her feelings for Philip Bennet, never mentioning them. If she had revealed them before, things might not be as they are now, with the two of them living together so naturally. But, Your Highness. Ruby Willow, although aware that Her Highness and young Master Bennet had no romantic feelings for each other, still felt that this wasn't right. Don't you worry about our young miss, now that she has His Highness. Do you think she'd still care about other men? Although young Master Bennet is a once-in-a-century talent, before meeting the third prince, I considered him the most handsome man. But now that I've seen the third prince's true countenance, the title of most handsome man definitely belongs to His Highness. Our young miss isn't foolish enough to choose second best over the best. Susie Green waved her hand, completely believing Ruby Willow was overly worried. The third prince, as beautiful as a celestial being, was absolutely unparalleled. Haha, Ruby Willow's concern is understandable. But, Ruby Willow, rest assured, whether your starting point is for me or for His Highness, I see your loyalty. From now on, Serenity Prince Mansion will value you. Grace Flowers stood up, smiling. Not only was she not angry at Ruby Willow's worry, but she also saw the good intentions behind it. Susie Green grew up in the Grace Flowers estate. Although it was also a noble family, the Grace Flowers estate was a family of the Jianghu, not bound by cumbersome etiquette, possessing the open-mindedness of martial artists. But she was currently living within the imperial family, and what she needed was a meticulous maid like Ruby Willow. In the future, there would inevitably be conflicts between women, and Ruby Willow's meticulousness would save her a lot of trouble. So, miss, are we returning now? Susie Green, hearing her mistress say so, felt it wasn't appropriate to suggest continuing to stroll with Philip Bennet, but she was also reluctant to return immediately, and couldn't help but feel disappointed. Of course not, let's continue our stroll. Grace Flowers smiled. With a clear conscience, she wouldn't restrict herself because of rumors. Glancing towards Philip Bennet and Jason Lawrence, who had reached the end of the street, she smiled faintly and stepped out of the pavilion. Chapter 61, A World of Difference. Since Grace Flowers hadn't appeared much in public in her past life, no one recognized her as they strolled through the streets. Philip Bennet, on the other hand, was a public figure, a well-known playboy of the great Jean dynasty. Many people recognized him, and seeing him carrying a child with a young woman by his side, they couldn't help but speculate about their identities. Philip Bennet, despite his reputation, had never been seen so close to a woman. His relationships had always been kept at arm's length. This intimate scene in broad daylight, with a child in tow, was truly astonishing. Yet, Philip Bennet and Grace Flowers seemed oblivious to the stares, continuing their stroll, unaffected by the whispers and gossip. Little lass, you used to be so shy you wouldn't dare lift your head in a crowd. Now, you can laugh and talk freely under the scrutiny of so many. It seems you've truly changed. Philip Bennet was accustomed to attention, being a favored son of heaven, used to the envious and admiring gazes. But Grace Flowers was different. Looking at the faint smile on her lips, a strange glint flickered in Philip Bennet's dark eyes, his gaze taking on a probing quality. So. Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow. Of course she'd changed, she wasn't the same person. Philip Bennet had been away from the great Jean dynasty for 3 years, 3 years she hadn't seen him in her past life. Such a dramatic change in 3 years wasn't so sudden. I like this change in you. Haha, good, keep it up. Don't be so timid anymore, Philip Bennet said flirtatiously. His words caused Ruby Willow's expression to shift. She tugged at Susie Green's sleeve, whispering, "We've strolled enough. Let's call the princess back. Ruby Willow knew that Grace Flowers often heeded Susie Green, who had been by her side since childhood. Susie Green agreed they had strolled enough. Even she, slow as she was, sensed something different in young Master Bennet's gaze towards her mistress. She was about to speak when Jason Lawrence interjected. "Uncle, you can't like Mother." "Justin already has a father," Jason Lawrence said seriously. "I'd rather you like that fierce older sister than Mother." "Haha, little tyke, do you like your uncle?" Philip Bennet's dark eyes flickered, dodging the question, as he looked up and asked Jason Lawrence with a laugh. Jason Lawrence nodded. Just as Philip Bennet was about to nod back in satisfaction, Jason Lawrence's next words froze his smile. "But Justin likes father and mother the most, so uncle is only second in my heart." Jason Lawrence extended his small hand, holding up 2 fingers. "Later, uncle will make you like uncle the most." Philip Bennet pursed his lips. He was always well liked. Winning over a child was as easy as flipping his hand. "Miss, shouldn't we return now?" Susie Green whispered to Grace Flowers, glancing at Philip Bennet. She suddenly felt it was dangerous for her mistress to be with young Master Bennet. She felt he had ill intentions, designs on her mistress and young master, especially like he wanted to steal the young master away. The young master was their precious treasure, they absolutely couldn't let young Master Bennet snatch him. Susie Green, sensing the danger, urged Grace Flowers to return to the mansion. "Yes, we should go back." "Let's go," Grace Flowers nodded, extending her hand towards Jason Lawrence, smiling. "Come here, Mother will carry you." "Let's go home." "Where's the carriage?" "I'll take you," Philip Bennet said to Grace Flowers, still holding Jason Lawrence. At the end of the street toward Serenity Prince Mansion, young Master Bennet. "This way." Hearing Grace Flowers wanted to return, Susie Green breathed a sigh of relief. Without waiting for Grace Flowers to answer Philip Bennet, she quickly spoke up. "Little Grace, why do I feel like your maid can't wait for me to disappear?" Philip Bennet glanced at Susie Green and Ruby Willow, displeased. "Before, when I came to the Hua mansion to find you, your maids welcomed me. Why is it, after 3 years, even though your maids haven't changed, I feel completely unwelcome?" Grace Flowers smiled but didn't answer. Looking at Susie Green and Ruby Willow, she understood their thoughts. She also knew Philip Bennet must have understood their thoughts too. However, this interaction with Philip Bennet had brought back a familiar feeling, like the closeness she felt with a neighborhood older brother. Therefore, she didn't reject strolling with him. Philip Bennet helped Jason Lawrence and Grace Flowers into the carriage. Watching the carriage gradually move away, a thoughtful look appeared in his dark eyes. This little lass had completely changed, as if she had become a different person. Could 3 years really change a person so drastically? The Grace Flowers of 3 years ago and the current Grace Flowers were vastly different, be it in personality, courage, or even intellect. If not for their identical appearance, he would almost think the current Grace Flowers was an imposter. The current little lass was quick-witted, courageous, resourceful, and had her own unique insights into matters, full of wisdom. The last time he met her at the tea house, he only felt her personality had changed, nothing else seemed unusual. But after spending half a day strolling with her today, after careful observation, he discovered this little lass had changed so much that he doubted whether she was the same person. Watching the carriage disappear, Philip Bennet withdrew his gaze, a contemplative expression on his face, and turned to leave. In the carriage, Grace Flowers looked at Ruby Willow and asked, "Today is the reunion festival. How has Serenity Prince Mansion celebrated this festival in the past?" This morning, when she woke up, Justin Lawrence had already left. She didn't know where he went, but it probably wasn't the palace. Today was supposed to be a day for reunion, and the palace should be holding a reunion banquet. If Justin Lawrence wanted to attend the reunion banquet, he wouldn't go alone but would bring her. He also wouldn't just go to the palace to visit his mother. "Our prince doesn't celebrate the reunion festival." He always gives the servants leave to return home for the festival. That day, the mansion is the emptiest, Ruby Willow replied. Almost all the servants in the mansion would leave, with only a few remaining, making the already quiet mansion even more desolate. She originally thought that with the princess in the mansion this year, there would be a different reunion festival. Unexpectedly, the princess didn't seem to value the reunion festival either. It seemed Serenity Prince Mansion truly couldn't have a lively reunion festival. Ruby Willow felt a little regretful. In the past, other mansions were lively, but only Serenity Prince Mansion was deserted. Before, it was considered a mansion without a mistress, so there was no way. After all, the prince didn't value holidays, practically ignoring them completely. Unexpectedly, even with the princess now, it was still the same. Doesn't the prince go to the palace to celebrate the reunion festival with his mother? Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow in confusion. She heard the emperor doted on Justin Lawrence, so he shouldn't be absent from the palace's reunion banquet. Every year during the reunion festival, the prince and consort don't participate. Moreover, the prince has never gone to the palace to celebrate the reunion festival with consort. Ruby Willow explained in detail. What an unfilial son, not even going to the palace to celebrate the reunion festival with his mother. Grace Flowers shook her head, not knowing what Justin Lawrence was doing, truly so busy. Your Highness, you misunderstand. 5 years ago, when His Highness first moved from the palace to this manor, he did return to celebrate the reunion festival with consort. It was consort who instructed him not to observe the great Jin dynasty's festivals, treating them as ordinary days. That's why His Highness disregards such holidays. Ruby Willow hastily explained, fearing the princess would misunderstand Justin Lawrence. Consort and His Highness don't value such holidays. Grace Flowers found this puzzling. Ordinary people attached great importance to festivals, especially in the great Jin dynasty, which traditionally valued such occasions. Yet, Justin Lawrence and consort seemed indifferent, a truly perplexing matter. It seemed no one knew of consort's background or her family's origins. In everyone's eyes, she appeared out of nowhere, without a powerful family yet enjoying the emperor's favor for over 20 years. In the imperial palace, this was truly rare. Ruby Willow, do you know anything about consort's family? Grace Flowers asked, looking at her. This servant doesn't know. No one dares gossip about consort. It would incur the emperor's wrath. This servant has only heard rumors. Fear flickered across Ruby Willow's face, as if merely mentioning consort could bring disaster. Oh. What kind of rumors? Grace Flowers' curiosity was piqued. Well. Ruby Willow hesitated, glancing towards the driver's seat where Justin Lawrence's trusted guard sat. It's all right, they're all our people, no outsiders, Grace Flowers said gently, her words carrying a reassuring power. It said that the emperor suddenly brought consort into the palace and, despite the officials' objections, appointed her as Jowie. He decreed that no one should gossip about her, on pain of death. Ruby Willow swallowed, continuing, the imperial harem is a place where women gather, rife with gossip. Despite the emperor's decree, some palace maids secretly speculated about consort's identity. Other concubines, jealous of her favor, spread rumors. When the emperor learned of this, he acted decisively. He found all the palace maids and concubines who had gossiped or speculated about consort and had them all executed. Not a single one survived. It said that it was the bloodiest massacre in the harem's history. From then on, no one dared speak ill of consort. Ruby Willow finished cautiously, glancing again at the driver, her face filled with fear. Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow. No wonder there were so few rumors about consort. So, this had happened over 20 years ago. But if consort's current title was consort, her previous identity must have been extraordinary. The emperor must have feared her true identity being revealed, hence the brutal display of power to silence any discussion and bury her past in a bloody massacre. Who was Consort De? What could make the emperor protect her so fiercely? Yet, why did Consort De's face show hatred and resentment when she mentioned the emperor? This was truly puzzling. Grace Flowers frowned, feeling that Justin Lawrence and Consort De were shrouded in mystery. She felt that coming to Serenity Prince Mansion to search for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet was like stepping into a bottomless pit, the road ahead arduous and unpredictable.